away about assembling a cross-party team to lead the country. The main news again, President Biden says he fears there's been a substantial loss of life in Florida after Hurricane Ian left millions of people without power and the state's infrastructure reeling. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has condemned plans by Russia to annex occupied parts of Ukraine tomorrow. And British Prime Minister Liz Truss is under fire after a round of radio interviews aimed at defending her fiscal policies only created fresh questions about them. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
A new report from the Department of Health and Human Services urges Americans to do something, anything at all. According to the study, getting off your ass and doing any sort of physical or mental activity could have positive health effects.
Look, we're not expecting you to go to the gym. That's clearly not happening. Just walk outside for a few blocks and then come back home. You can bring potato chips if that's what it'll take.
For many years, the health department has encouraged Americans to watch less TV, but this report reverses that, saying, quote, watch whatever the hell you want, but at least pay attention and remember who the characters are, or just admire the colors. Colors are pretty. It's expected that following the advice in this report will cut down on the largest cause of death among Americans, laying on your back until your mouth fills up with saliva and you drown. Following the report's release, the most popular exercise now seems to be masturbating, but researchers warn that if you do it in public, stick to the sidewalk or you might get hit by cars.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live. It is Free Talk Live. Welcome to the program here. Of course, you can bring up anything you want to discuss. Phones are open, as they always are. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here tonight, it's Ian.
And Mark.
We're doing it old style, Mark. There's
That's right.
Just the two of us here in the studio tonight. Reeve Coverdale, unfortunately, is unable to join us. He says he just had too much going on, but he wanted to be here, so...
there were many nights in 2002 and 2003 when we, and 4 and 5 and 6, when it was just you and I doing the show, so that's no problem at all.
Indeed. So there's a lot to talk about tonight, including the next steps after the supermajority of voters in the Donbass and southeastern regions of Ukraine have voted to join Russia. Of course, the mainstream media and Western governments are refusing to acknowledge the elections, or rather the referenda, as legitimate.
And it's certainly true that you could make a fake referenda. You can keep home the people you don't want and the people you do, but when the Ukrainian government told people who would vote not to go to the polls, to me, that was an admission that they knew they were going to lose.
Yep, and they did.
And I would ask Americans, how many Canadians would you kill if Montana and Idaho was full of Canadians who wanted to secede to Canada?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many would you? Because it's not that I certainly don't support the invasion of Ukraine, and I certainly am against people dying, even people in uniform. Although I do feel that people in uniform kind of signed up for dying. In the case of Russia, it seems as though there's a lot of people in uniform that didn't necessarily, sign up entirely, whatever.
They are calling in the reserves in Russia.
Now they are. I don't know about the first go-rounds and, all this. But, ultimately, if the United States respected a country that seceded from Great Britain, respected the right of geopolitical entities to secede from other geopolitical entities, not just the ones that are convenient for it and its foreign policy.
Politically convenient.
But if the United States just supported everybody in making their choices and supported democracy, because this is an area of democracy that I would be on board with. Now, I'm kind of the opinion that the status quo is worth preserving. So in that sense, I wouldn't just do what Brexit did. I wouldn't do 51%.
Oh, was that what they did there? Yeah, it was, wasn't
Brexit was 51% and the dog caught the car. But I would say that if a supermajority, and I don't know whether that's 60%, 66%, 75%.
I think it's generally considered more than two-thirds.
More than two-thirds? So
like
66% plus one?
Yeah, well, 67%.
66.6 plus 1,
Right.
whatever. 67%, perfect. 67% of people in a given geographic area with a fair election. Look, is everybody listening to me going to say that every election in the United States history, in their own lifetimes in the United States history, has been fair and just and every vote has been counted? Because I don't believe that.
I think that's widely disbelieved here in the United States.
I'm certain that anybody who understands large numbers understands that there's a level of error. And, when you get down to razor-thin numbers like what happened in Florida in 2001, 2000, that, mistakes are made. I don't know whether Bush won by a lot more or whether he lost by a little bit.
Well, these were not razor-thin margins according to the numbers that are coming out of these areas. Mark, did you want to dig into this? Because it sounds like you're interested in talking about this. Or did you want to talk about the Free State Project and some interesting polling numbers on that side of things?
Let's get into the Free State Project first.
All right, so something got posted. So we'll talk about the Donbass and all that coming up here in a bit. Of course, the phones are open at 603-283-6160. Mark, you've got to be really happy with these numbers that are coming out about the Free State Project in a poll that was conducted by Suffolk University and Boston Globe. And I don't know what...
Before we go on,
I don't know what the other questions were in this poll. All I have is an excerpt of one question from... It appears to be at least 20 questions, this poll, because this is question 20. And the question is regarding the Free State Project, which, for those that don't know, is a migration of libertarians that has been going on for about 20 years, migrating here to New Hampshire.
Before we go on with giving the poll question, I am not a Free State hater. I do not hate the Free State Project.
You just don't think it'll work.
I think that I'll explain that in depth as we go on in this hour.
Would you call yourself a critic?
I think a critic is a fair term.
Okay.
Skeptical? I think that more likely what I am is that I am providing information to those that might sign up for the Free State Project, to those who have, and that you can choose to listen to me in whatever way you want. But I am skeptical as to how the Free State Project is currently sort of going on, because they'd say, well, we're not a political movement, we're just just this or just that, right? Like, we're just the bus that gets the libertarians from elsewhere to New Hampshire. And then, organizations like the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance spring up, and I think that there are things that New Hampshire Liberty Alliance could do, and I would like them to see them do them.
You mean besides what they're already doing, which is rating all 400 state reps, all 24 state senators, rating as many of the roughly 1,000 pieces of legislation that come out every single year, and they're not quite to the point where they can do all of that, but they're at like probably 70 or 80% of them. You're saying they need to do more? What else do they need to do?
The one thing they need to do, and I think what they do is amazing.
And they come out with voting recommendations, too, after they rate the bills.
I'm a life member, and I'm proud of it. But
they're one of the most effective pro-liberty organizations in New Hampshire. Maybe the most effective.
And maybe a former president of it will call in tonight.
That'd be cool.
To talk about something.
Okay.
He said he would, but we'll see whether that happens or not. I did ask him.
He's a busy guy. Go ahead.
What my thought process on this is that we could have a plan. I think that much political capital has been, I'm going to say it, wasted on things like independence, things, fantastic ideas like, we're going to tell the federal government to shove it, right? Like things that'll never happen. And
secession can absolutely happen. It's happened before. It can happen again.
Yeah, I just don't think it can. And I wouldn't even support if it did. I'm against secession of New Hampshire from the United States for a variety of reasons. We can go over those at some point. But what I would say is that if you actually had a plan, that the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance developed a plan that was worked on by all of the members, voted on, and hashed out, that something like, let's pass an amendment to the New Hampshire Constitution. This is not impossible. This is easier than something like secession. Let's pass an amendment to the New Hampshire Constitution that says that it takes, I'm going to say 2/3, but maybe 3/4. In a really powerful world, let's say 3/4. I got my wishes. I'm going to wish for 3/4. 3/4 of legislators must vote yes to pass a law.
Great.
What that
Yeah,
would
that's
do
great.
is drive a stake through the heart of the two-party system. There would be none of this Democrat, Republican, backwashing, you vote for this, I'll vote for that. All that stuff would be done. Just good laws are passed, presumably by good people. Because if something is important enough to throw somebody in prison over, it should be important enough that you can get 3/4 of the politicians to agree on it.
What about repealing the existing laws? Would that then require 75% to repeal an existing law?
I say that and there's possibilities on this, and this is why we would need a vote. I'm not the smartest guy in the room necessarily. I say 50% to repeal a law, 75% to pass it. But it could just be laws have a mandatory sunset.
That would be good.
New laws need to be voted on, and maybe that's by 50%. That won't get rid of the two-party system, but at the very least, it will stop people in 1880 from legislating what goes on in my life. Thomas Jefferson was very clear that every generation the tree of liberty needs to be watered by the blood of patriots and tyrants.
So any laws
what he meant was that young people shouldn't be ruled by the generation before.
Any laws that would then sunset would have to then be reinitiated by the 75% rule at that point?
I would love all these things to be included. I think it should be hard to pass laws.
I agree with you there. The number here is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. How did the Free State Project do in what appears to be the first poll asking people what they think about it?
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Inflation, a sidelined labor force, and ever-increasing interest rates. It's the perfect storm for pushing the U.S. economy over the edge. Savvy investors are diversifying into gold and silver with BullionMax.com. You can buy direct from BullionMax.com without talking to a salesperson, and your precious metals will ship fully insured directly to your home. Free Talk Live listeners can now order one of BullionMax's most popular products, the Goldback. Now in stock, but supplies are going fast. To get your Goldbacks, go to BullionMax.com/FTL.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project early movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live listen line, 641-793-0191.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can join the show. The number here is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We've got some interesting poll results that I didn't know was going to be coming, but here it is. There's the Boston Globe teamed up with Suffolk University and has asked some questions about the Free State Project. Well, apparently one question about the Free State Project in what appears to be just a generic poll about various different issues. And I believe I have found the actual full poll results at this point, so we'll see if there's anything else worth talking about in here. But the Free State Project results are certainly interesting, and we're going to dig a little deeper on that coming up here in a moment. It's Ian and Mark in the studio with you tonight. And also want to make sure you know about Bitcoin.com, because if you're interested in learning about cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, then Bitcoin.com can help you with that. Just click Get Started at the top of the page, and you will then get some introductory information and videos that you can watch. If you're really in a hurry, just watch the first one. You'll get some of the basic concepts down, and it'll take all of 3 minutes of your time to do that. So get started over at Bitcoin.com. You can also get the latest news headlines there at news.bitcoin.com. You can buy cryptocurrency through bitcoin.com. So if you are finally feeling comfortable enough to do that, they have their own wallet. You can buy crypto right through the site. They used to offer just Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, but last I heard they had quite the variety of options available over there. So be sure you check that out. And don't forget, you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin. One Bitcoin right now is just under $20,000 per coin. You can buy 1% of a Bitcoin if you want to, or less. So it's up to you.
You can.
How you do this stuff. Go to bitcoin.com and click Get Started to get started.
And I recommend for everyone, now's a good time, in my opinion, to get that one Bitcoin. I'm not saying
if you can.
Yeah, but you can dollar cost average. It's been a while that it's been sitting at 20,000. If you really wanted to buckle down, you would be pretty far into it at this point.
Yep. So let's continue here, Mark. We've got this story, and credit goes to Caroline McCaughey at the Caroline MC on Twitter for revealing this information about the Free State Project. The Free State Project being the libertarian migration here to New Hampshire, which has been going for close to 2 decades now. New Hampshire was chosen as the destination state back in late 2003. So we're about 19 years into this thing at this point. The official move for the Free State Project, meaning that the Free State Project wanted to reach a certain number of signers. It wanted to reach 20,000 people, libertarian types, voluntarists, libertarians, anarchists, people that love liberty, people that believe the maximum role of government should be the protection of life, liberty, and property. I believe that is what the Free State Project's statement of intent says. It basically says I will move to New Hampshire and do whatever I can within my relative means to, or maximum available effort to achieve a government that has no more than protection of life, liberty, and property. And so that's been going on. They reached their goal in 2016 of getting to 20,000 signers. It has now been more than 5 years. So there was that window of time. The Free State Project, they picked some arbitrary number 20 years ago that said, okay, once we reach 20,000, you'll have 5 years to move. And so we're past that point at this point. It has now been 6 years since that number was reached. And I don't know what the official numbers are at the moment. I believe the last I heard, they were somewhere in the 4,000 or 5,000 range for people that are here in New Hampshire. And I think that counts people that live in New Hampshire that have subsequently joined the Free State Project.
Which, of course, the Free State Project is a movement to move people to New Hampshire. So people who already lived here, it's kind of like, fluffing the numbers.
Perhaps. But regardless, it's probably at least a few thousand people that have moved here. They say that in 2021, there were at least 1,000 people that migrated here as part of the Free State Project. It was the biggest year on record. And, of course, a lot of that is thanks to the COVID crackdowns and things that were going on. So there's definitely an influx. There's way more people coming here now than I can remember seeing in probably the last 5-10 years. So it's definitely getting busy. Lots more people are visiting and planning to move.
It's worth pointing out that many people have moved who want to see more freedom, but they don't even entirely know what the Free State Project is, or they chose not to sign up for it.
Sure.
And a variety of things like that.
There's people who just moved here because New Hampshire was a free place or a relatively free place, and that's been going on for decades.
And it's also worth pointing out that many people have left because they decided for whatever reason their lives just weren't going to go this direction. Mm-hmm. And they're counted, and they're not on the numbers. So I don't have any idea what the numbers are because
the people who have moved here, you mean?
Right. They claim numbers of people. They fluff the numbers with people who are here. Lots of people have moved who didn't sign up, and I feel like they count. And lots of people,
and a lot of people have moved, right? Who
moved and left, and.
Yeah.
So I don't know, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000.
Two of our co-hosts that I can think of off the top of my head, Captain Kickass and Arya, they are some of the best activists we have here, and they didn't sign up for the Free State Project. Right. So yeah, it's unknown. But the idea of the Free State Project has been getting out there, especially within the last few months. We have had some campaigns by mostly Democrat candidates and Democrat action groups and such that have been on the attack in a way I have never seen. I mean, I've seen some hit piece flyers here and there. I've had them done about me, for instance, here in Keene. So, I mean, I'm familiar with the attacks, but it's never been concentrated and as widely sown as these are. They've had protests, physical, real-life protests. Most of them only get like 3 to 5 people, but the one here in Keene got 30.
Keene is certainly a stronghold of Democrats, which are, for whatever reason, the group that dislikes the Free State Project the most.
They're spending tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on attack ads that are being mailed to people's homes in areas in which Free Staters, quote unquote, are on the ballot. They want to alert people. Even the Democrats are trying to alert Republicans to who the Free Staters are on the ballot and trying to dissuade Republicans from supporting Free Staters.
And this is fascinating. Mm-hmm. Like, really, the people that the Democrats have been fighting against for centuries, going on centuries now.
Yeah.
Suddenly, now, the Democrats are like, well, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah. Well, let's bring the old boss back.
You're right. Because they... And I remember sitting with Cory Booker's, one of his senior staff members on a train one time. We sat and talked for hours.
That's a Democrat guy?
Yeah. Okay. Senator from New Jersey.
Okay.
And he said he wasn't scared at all of Republicans because they have a demographics problem. Which
they're
means
dying.
They're old. And he said that he's deathly afraid of libertarians because they're philosophically driven. Right. And they can't, and thus cannot be stopped.
Well, the good news for him is the best libertarians are moving out of New Jersey, and they're moving to New Hampshire if they want to actually be effective. And the thing is, even though it's now 20 years into this thing, looks like, according to the poll here at the Boston Globe, just over half of the respondents have never heard of the Free State Project. Now, they only interviewed 500 people. It's still a scientifically, statistical study. But it's not the hugest, not the largest.
It's not the biggest number, but it's interesting that they did it.
Yeah, and as far as we know, it's the first time anything like this has ever been done. Now, of course, things get more interesting when you look at the demographic breakdowns, which we will do coming up. But just the top-level numbers, the totals, you got 51%, they say they've never heard of the Free State Project. 10% say they've heard of the Free State Project, and they're favorable towards it. 26% say unfavorable. And then those who have heard of it, but they're not sure how they feel about it, 13%. So we're going to continue here and share some more. And, of course, Mark's going to tell us why this is bad or good news. I'm not sure what he's going to say. Coming up here in moments, this is Free Talk Live.
Negotiation isn't just something union leaders and sports agents do. Your entire day is a series of negotiations. If you have young children, you know that. In fact, your kids can teach you a lot about negotiating with grown-ups. According to the world's greatest negotiator, Herb Cohen, author of You Can Negotiate Anything. Herb says that kids understand the process of decision-making within an organization. When one parent says no, they'll ask the other. And Cohen says children persist and persevere. And like smart negotiators of all ages, kids know that no is an opening bargaining position. With money and attention so scarce now, effective communication skills have never been more important, especially if you're a job seeker. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. President Biden says he fears there has been a substantial loss of life in Florida after Hurricane Ian slammed ashore yesterday, leaving millions of people without power and the state's infrastructure reeling. More than 2 million customers are without electricity. There has been extensive flooding and devastation of property after the storm barreled across central Florida on its way to the Atlantic Ocean. President Biden spoke during a visit to the headquarters of FEMA, the federal government's emergency management agency.
It made landfall yesterday, and it is still moving across the state today. This could be the deadliest hurricane in Florida's history. The numbers are still unclear, but we're hearing early reports of what may be substantial loss of life.
And the president pledged a full government response to the storm. He spoke today with Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis, and President Biden says he will visit Florida and Puerto Rico in the next few days. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is condemning plans by Russia to declare the annexation of occupied parts of Ukraine tomorrow. Guterres says the annexation will have no legal standing and goes against the United Nations Charter.
The Russian Federation is one of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, shares a particular responsibility to respect the Charter. Any decision to proceed with the annexation of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson and Zaporizhia, regions of Ukraine, would have no legal value and deserves to be condemned.
British Prime Minister Liz Truss is under fire again in the UK after a round of radio interviews aimed at defending her fiscal policies only created fresh questions about them. But the Prime Minister indicated she will not change course, despite IMF demands that her tax-cutting proposals be withdrawn. FSN's London Bureau Chief Laura Macon-Isherwood with the latest.
UK Prime Minister Liz Truss claims her government is pulling all the levers to drive economic growth. In the short term, however, the economy is in flux. The pound tanked after the headlines of her Chancellor's mini-budget broke, prompting so much concern that on Wednesday the Bank of England announced it would start buying government bonds in a bid to bring stability to the market. Banks and other lenders have continued to pull mortgage products as interest rates rise and concerns grow about loan affordability down the line. Prime Minister Truss, though, maintains she had to take what she calls decisive action and says she's prepared to take controversial decisions. Laura Macon-Isherwood, London.
Major strike action has been taking place in France today. 3 of the country's main unions are calling for salary rises in the face of the country's runaway inflation. They are also demanding a halt to pension reform. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here. The number is 603-283-6160. We're talking about the Free State Project appearing in a poll for what may be the very first time, asking people in New Hampshire, I presume these are likely voters.
Actually, they do separate by likely voters, and so they just say people respondents first, and then it's likely voters after that. The numbers are very similar, though.
No. Okay, so
That's what I saw.
No. Okay, so what this is, Mark, is a poll of likely voters. So what they break it down by here is those who are almost certain and probably going to vote.
Oh, I see.
So that's the only difference between the people in this. The Boston Globe, Suffolk University did a multiple question survey, and it's your typical kind of like political poll, like, oh, who are you voting for governor? Who are you voting for Senate? That kind of thing, which that's not that interesting. But
then there's a little something else added.
There's really something here that is a surprise, and that is they asked about the Free State Project. And we do have the numbers here. I'm also kind of looking at some of the other questions we'll talk a little bit about, because there are some other interesting ones in here. But the Free State Project is the most interesting to us because, well, Mark, you and I, we migrated here in 2006 from our home state of Florida to make
the second freest place in the world, according to Cato Institute's currently.
To make, and yeah, that's what they say, to make New Hampshire our new home. And we've been here since 2006. You've kind of migrated away somewhat. You're back for a visit, basically, here this week. You came back to marry Bonnie and I, and thank you for that. But you're living part of the time in Honduras, you're living part of the time in Florida, and you kind of float around to other places.
And I'm a legal resident of the
Saipan.
U.S. Marianas. Right.
So you've had, I don't know, I wouldn't call it a falling out, but you've become more of a skeptic.
Disenchanted.
That's the right word, with the Free State Project. Is this giving you ammunition to find out that still most people in New Hampshire haven't heard of the Free State Project, but of those who have, a plurality seems to find it unfavorable, according to these numbers. And this appears to be true in almost every category except for the Republicans, where only 1% find it more favorable than those who find it unfavorable. It's 14% of Republican respondents find the Free State Project to be favorable, and 13% say it's unfavorable, with 11% undecided, while a whopping 62% of Republicans have never heard of it.
Yep.
So otherwise, the Democrats and the Independents, the plurality find the Free State Project unfavorable.
The Democrats probably have heard of the Free Staters at a much higher rate than the Republicans have, right?
A little more. 49% of Democrats have never heard of the Free State Project.
So that's still half have. But
remember, they're just talking to likely voters. These aren't activists. Activist Democrats certainly have heard of the Free State Project, probably 99.9%.
But what I would say is it's interesting how humans look at the bad thing as opposed to the good thing. That's the first thing that I'd say. And I think that's a way that the Free State Project itself has kind of, it's kind of made a mistake. The kind of people that will pick up and move their lives are the kind of people that are angry. They're angry at the way things are going in America, and they want a solution to that. And they're willing to spend the thousands, maybe tens of thousands, depending on who they are, to pick up and move from one location to another. I've heard of people that have managed to do it for hundreds of dollars, but there's not a lot of them. Most people are spending thousands in order to do it, and that's a big commitment.
It is.
And they have to be motivated by something.
That's one of the reasons we get some of the best activists here, because you've got to be committed to this idea.
Right. And the fact that, you have to get over the idea that it's a frozen hellscape. You got winter 5 months out of the year in New Hampshire, and that's in the nice areas. It's like 6 and 7 up in the North Country. So
yeah, but at least you can shovel the snow. You sure as hell can't shovel floodwaters.
You can't shovel floodwaters, but how often does a hurricane hit Sarasota, Florida? Once a century?
I don't know. You never know when you're going to get hit. I don't know. How often does Fort Myers get hit? Because they just got slammed.
There are people who died last week who lived their entire lives in Sarasota County, Manatee County, who had never in their lives seen the eye of a hurricane pass over their county.
Sure. Yeah.
So
they get lucky.
Winter, however, this is worth pointing out, right? Like, winter is a catastrophic weather event that occurs every single year. I want you to think about how many.
It's not.
Yes, listen to this.
They handle it fine.
How many people do you think died in this hurricane that occurred in Sarasota?
I've seen hundreds.
Hundreds.
That's what the media is saying. It's hundreds.
Wow.
Yeah, it's unusual. It was a very unusual hurricane down there.
Yeah,
but I'm not talking about death. I mean,
death matters.
The property destruction that's really
dozens of people die in winter in the United States every single year.
Okay, but how many die in New Hampshire?
You take a small little section of the country that has winter
about here.
and section it off. Well,
the Granite Staters know how to handle wintertime.
I think it's fair to compare areas that have, you're talking about Florida as though it's one thing, but it's a small area.
Florida is not a small area.
Fine. I don't know how many people die in New Hampshire, but if you consider all the people who slip on the ice while shoveling, crack a hip, and die.
That sucks. There's
literally people die
no
from cracked. I'm just saying.
Yeah, there's risk here. There's no doubt about it.
People who slide off the road, some kind of ice accident, black ice. You talk about people just go out in the woods and freeze to death. This happens. The number
don't do that.
I suspect is it's above 10. It is not an insignificant number of people who die every year knowing the dangers of winter. And then you consider the salt damage to the environment, trying to keep the roads clean. You consider the incredible the carbon damage to the atmosphere by the big old trucks that have to push the snow around. You consider the just the tremendous amount of work.
These are all reasons why a bunch
ice.
of pussies will leave New Hampshire and they'll move to Florida. And the hardcore activists that come to New Hampshire are the best of the best.
I
because they're
slipped
not
the
afraid.
last day. I slipped the last day that I was in New Hampshire in the winter on ice,
man.
and I'm so glad I'm gone from it.
That's the worst part. I'll give you that.
And I have to come back in December, and it stinks.
Yeah, I'll give you that. The slipping on the ice is the worst part. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and so I think it's fair when you talk about hurricanes and try to paint Florida as this dangerous place full of
They got
pythons, alligators, and hurricanes, that moose attack more people than alligators do, and that winter kills more than hurricanes do.
Yeah, but you can carry a gun without asking permission here.
That's true. You can carry a gun without asking permission here.
Concealed or open. As long as you're not a felon.
The states that surround it, though, have recreational marijuana, and New Hampshire hasn't been able to get its butt up off of it and get that done.
We need more activists here. We need more people who are willing to do what it takes to make more freedom
sacrifice
happen.
their lives, the minutes of their lives, so others can be free. Do the opposite of what Ayn Rand said. Forget about your own life.
That's your view. That it's a sacrifice, Mark. And if you want to see it that way, that's fine. I think some of us see it as an investment in the future.
I do,
because you got to spend your time on something, and if you want to spend your time farming or playing video games or whatever, you should do what you want to do.
Because that's not what I believe. What I believe is that working within the political process as it exists is not the most efficient way to get to freedom. And I want to be fair and above board on this. But you've thrown a couple of low punches here, and I just want to react with a couple of low blows to let you know what it's like. But I really do not believe that. I believe that it's only one of the only paths that will work is working within the political system, but I don't think it's the most efficient one. And I think the most efficient one is finding a government, some place that currently has sovereignty, rather than talking about, we're going to secede from America. We don't know when, we don't know how, we don't know what it's going to look like, but we're going to do it. Right?
Somebody's got to do it, Mark.
Right. Honduras is already seceded from America. It's already got its sovereignty. It doesn't have to worry about it. So the best thing to do is to go to some place that
because you can trust the Honduran politicians to honor their agreement.
I don't trust any politicians to honor their agreement. And I think that you need to create ironclad legal documents, and that we will need to do a certain amount of testing, but that how long does the Free State Project get to figure it out? You get a lifetime, right? It's liberty in our lifetime. I was told it was liberty in Lloyd's lifetime, but Lloyd's been dead more than a decade now.
Yeah,
God bless him.
Right. It's just a slogan, Mark. We all know
it's just a slogan because you're not going to do it.
Of course, it's not realistic to believe that would be the case.
And Capistan encompasses private governance, and that already exists right now in Honduras.
You talking about Prospera?
Prospera.hn.
The number here is 603-283-6160, but yet you're not going to Prospera.
Morazan.city.
The number 603-283-6160. Prospera apparently wasn't right for you for some reason. So there's more coming up here in moments. You can join the show. And now, of course, Honduras is trying to shut down the ZA program. We can talk about that, too. But I want to get into these poll numbers coming up here in moments. It's Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live.
You got to give those guys credit, though. Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, they've established this for themselves. And who are the Hispanic leaders? Who are the Chinese leaders? It's a brilliant marketing plan on their part to get them radio interviews and all kinds of appearances and sell books for them. But otherwise, that's really all it is for them.
Right, and then when you call them out exactly what you said, if you are a black person, you are supposed to get upset when they tell you to get upset. Me and a lot of other people who are black, we've grown up I'm 55 going on 56. I don't see color. I see people. I see behavior. I see morals. I see values. I don't see the color of a person's skin. That does not dictate how I should interact with that person. Their behavior, their morals and values dictate how I interact with them.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
I've been told no in many different ways.
I give you an order and you're going to obey it.
George, you can go this way. You can't do that and you have to leave here.
You cannot bring Simon to the rally.
Walk with me.
Well, I'm comfortable here, actually. Whoa, hey, who do you think you are? Excuse me.
There is no video and audio allowed in this office.
No, I have work today.
You ain't going to make it.
Wait a minute.
Holy crap.
Hey! Oh my God! Unbelievable! Why are you running from me? Because you scared me. What am I being detained for?
You're being served.
What is this?
You're being served.
What is this? Bureaucrats have a funny way of telling people no.
That's the sound of the men working on the chain.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, phones open. Should you wish to join us, you can do that here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And by the way, if you have worked or lived at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and you've suffered from cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, you're entitled to compensation. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these diseases. There might be some deadlines for filing in this case, so don't wait. You should give a call to see if you or a loved one are eligible. 888-918-1037. I'll give you that number again in a moment. If you were at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and you've had a serious health issue, money is already set aside. 888-918-1037 to learn more about that.
And it's also true that heirs to people who suffered from this would also be eligible.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. But give them a call, 888-918-1037. So, Mark, we've got the numbers here on what may be the very first ever poll question asked of likely voters in New Hampshire. So they are excluding unlikely voters and people who don't vote. And, well, Do those people matter as much? Well, that's an interesting question.
Not to this poll.
Not to the poll. But regardless, it's still interesting to see how many people have never heard of the Free
It's an argument
State
for voting,
Project.
I suppose.
Although you were just arguing against the political system as a method of change.
I am of the opinion that if you feel like voting, you should vote. Right?
What about running for office?
Absolutely. Sure.
Okay, do it, but you're saying it's not very effective.
I'm saying that here's what I'm saying specifically, that libertarians are an interesting mix of left and right. They're a progressive reactionary group, and that makes them unlikely to win in a revolution. You look at history, and they're just not the sorts that's going to go out there and pick up a pitchfork and a torch and say, we want justice. They're just not that. They're not progressive in that way. They're reactionary to stimuli rather than proactive. The reason the Soviets won wasn't because there were so many of them, and it wasn't because they were they had the best philosophy. The reasons the Soviets won is because they were the best organized. And
what? The World War II?
No. The Russian rebellion with the whites and the reds and all that stuff.
Okay.
The reason they
Long
took
run,
over the
Soviets didn't win.
They took over. Well, indeed, not against the United States, but they weren't fighting against the United States. They were fighting against the whites, as they called them.
Okay.
The white Russians, and of course, the red Russians didn't get themselves a drink. So but the reason is because they stuck together like glue. Libertarians don't stick together because their highest priority isn't loyalty. Their highest priority is truth. And if you ask me, well, is Ian right on this subject? You're my friend, and I'm going to protect you and, all that stuff. But, you're not right on everything. Like, you see how I vacillate. I'm not firm. The commie says, he's right, or he's right enough. He's righter than you, and I'll shoot you over him, right? And that's why revolutions...
Yeah, but there was infighting in the communism people as well. They were killing themselves.
After they took care of the whites, then they began shooting the reds. But, that's when you start shooting your friends, after you've won the revolution. That's why the Free Staters kicked you out once they had started being very successful. Anyway, the whole idea is that Free Staters will not, libertarians will not fight a revolution.
But they're well armed.
Indeed.
You're saying that that's all a bunch of show, or what?
They're just not revolutionary. That's my contention. And the evidence I have is that there's been all kinds of matches thrown into the kindling.
Well, I think they want to avoid violence. Understandably, I mean, who doesn't want to do that?
I'm not telling them to fight a revolution, Ian.
Okay.
I'm saying they won't. I
don't know. I mean, if
there's been over and over and over a match thrown in the kindling. Carl Draga, the guy who flew a Cessna into the tax building in D.C., McVeigh, a whole variety of things that would.
Well, that's evidence that no one will fight a revolution because no one stepped up in those kindling
The libertarians, patriot types, if you wanted to group those two together, those are the ones that care about that.
Okay,
that kind of stuff. All I'm saying is,
so since no one's willing to fight the revolution that you're talking about,
there's only two ways to get to change for the reactionary progressive, and that is working within the system,
and that's what they're doing here.
And that's what they're doing. But I believe that will be a generational change. It will take, and I don't believe that your children.
But that said,
care as much about liberty as you do because they didn't face the adversity surrounding it as you did. I can assure you my 14-year-old son does not care that much about libertarianism. He likes the philosophy. He understands what we're talking about. But first-person shooters are top priority for him.
Well, that happened with Michelle Seven's kids as well, where they didn't turn out as hardcore. In fact, some of them seem to go against...
And they should live their own lives.
Of course they should.
Right? The whole idea that we're going to outbreed them, I think it's antithetical to what liberty is all about. Liberty is about individualism, and individualism says that people should be able to live their own lives. You can't raise libertarians. Libertarians are forged in the fire of adversity. And if you don't have the fire of adversity, you don't have libertarians.
Well, there's plenty of adversity here in New Hampshire, Mark. There's a lot of people that don't like freedom. There's a lot of people that don't like the Free Staters, as this poll is going to show here.
Yes, but the rabbit in the tortoise and the hare, he saw that he was so far ahead of the tortoise that he laid down and took a nap. And the tortoise, paid by the state to continue on with what he does every single day, just a little bit more and a little bit more, passed up the lickety-split rabbit who thought he was ahead, and that was it. I'm just saying, just because you're 1% penetration today and 1.1% penetration tomorrow, 1.2% penetration the next day, doesn't mean that the day after that you're going to be 1.3, right? That that nothing is linear, and that's not how conflict works. And you're in conflict with the state. Make no bones about it. And that the other alternative, to me, is to go find a sovereign entity and offer value for value, come to an agreement, and make that agreement as ironclad as it can possibly be, and try this probably a few times, because there's probably going to be some failures surrounding it.
Sure.
That are certainly, but the Free State Project certainly has had some failures in its 15 years of existence. So, you know, give some time and some fairness to the other side, and we'll see whether or not these ideas work out. But it's my belief, having just sat in on a conference call this week, that the freest place in the world is going to pop up in the relatively near future, in weeks, and I'll be able to talk about it. And, you know, that's what I'm hoping to be the case. But, you know, currently, right now, there's Prospera.hn. That's the website.
Yeah, we've been paying attention to that. I follow
Morazan.city.
their social media, and I'm interested in seeing what happens. I know right now Prospera is in a fight for their life because the Honduran government has voted unanimously this year to abolish the special economic zone laws. Now, they do have to vote again on it apparently in 2023, but they did it unanimously this year, so it's hard to be optimistic that anything significant is going to change between now and then. But who knows? Maybe they'll pay off a whole bunch of Honduran government people.
Let me ask you a question, though.
So the whole thing could fall apart, but they are going to fight it. They've got their lawyers, and you know, and I hope it works out. I really do. I mean, it would be great if they could carve out a freer place for people to work and to live, and that's what I understand that they're trying to do. But again, you didn't join them for some reason. You're looking for something else, and maybe this is this mystery project that you're possibly going to announce within the next some number of weeks.
I laid my chips in on a place called Coral Beach Village, and
also in Honduras.
And I believe that it has I think it has the best mix of other locations, like Prospera.
But no, it's not a ZA.
Morazan.
It's not a special economic zone.
It isn't at this time, but it may be in the future. That was the intention, but you know, we were undercut by the law, and you know, that's the way that goes. And but I believe that with the tourist zone designation that currently exists in Honduras, that we can get the kind of freedoms that I'm looking for. I believe that it's already a very free place.
Can you carry a gun?
You can, let's see, if you are a resident, you can own a gun, and I presume that means you can carry it. You asked the question in a way that I wasn't prepared for.
You'll have to ask an attorney to check the local laws. These Central American countries are not really known for being gun rights friendly.
Not nearly so as the United States. I would agree with you on that. But I don't think you need a gun on Utila.
Is weed legal in Honduras?
I suspect it is not, but best I can tell, people smoke it in copious amounts on the islands because it's just kind of looked the other side.
Well, didn't you say there's no cops on the island?
There's local police. There's one gun for the day shift and one gun for the night shift.
More coming up here in moments. The number 603-283-6160. And look, hey Mark, I hope this thing works out for the islands, but look, the average person can't move to a tropical island. It's just not something that they can do.
I'm hoping to make that the case that they can.
Well, you'll have to let us know when that happens. For now, that seems to be something that average person who needs a job somewhere probably can't do. There's more coming up here in moments. So what can the average person do? Well, the Free State Project seems like the best bet, but are people friendly to it? We'll talk about it.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases and and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. President Biden says he fears there has been a substantial loss of life in Florida after Hurricane Ian slammed ashore yesterday, leaving millions of people without power and the state's infrastructure reeling. More than 2 million customers are without electricity. There has been extensive flooding and devastation of property after the storm barreled across central Florida on its way to the Atlantic Ocean. President Biden spoke during a visit to the headquarters of FEMA, the federal government's emergency management agency.
It made landfall yesterday, and it is still moving across the state today. This could be the deadliest hurricane in Florida's history. The numbers are still unclear, but we're hearing early reports of what may be substantial loss of life.
And the president pledged a full government response to the storm. He spoke today with Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis, and President Biden says he will visit Florida and Puerto Rico in the next few days. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is condemning plans by Russia to declare the annexation of occupied parts of Ukraine tomorrow. Guterres says the annexation will have no legal standing and goes against the United Nations Charter.
The Russian Federation is one of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, shares a particular responsibility to respect the Charter. Any decision to proceed with the annexation of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson and Zaporizhia, regions of Ukraine, would have no legal value and deserves to be condemned.
British Prime Minister Liz Truss is under fire again in the UK after a round of radio interviews aimed at defending her fiscal policies only created fresh questions about them. But the Prime Minister indicated she will not change course, despite IMF demands that her tax-cutting proposals be withdrawn. FSN's London Bureau Chief Laura Macon-Isherwood with the latest.
UK Prime Minister Liz Truss claims her government is pulling all the levers to drive economic growth. In the short term, however, the economy is in flux. The pound tanked after the headlines of her Chancellor's mini-budget broke, prompting so much concern that on Wednesday the Bank of England announced it would start buying government bonds in a bid to bring stability to the market. Banks and other lenders have continued to pull mortgage products as interest rates rise and concerns grow about loan affordability down the line. Prime Minister Truss, though, maintains she had to take what she calls decisive action and says she's prepared to take controversial decisions. Laura Macon-Isherwood, London.
Major strike action has been taking place in France today. 3 of the country's main unions are calling for salary rises in the face of the country's runaway inflation. They are also demanding a halt to pension reform. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, concluding our look this week at the woman poised to become Italy's next Prime Minister, far-right leader Giorgia Meloni, whose coalition won last week's elections in the country. Today, a look at her social policies and what they will mean. She defines herself as a woman, a mother and a Christian, and her election win has already sparked protests by abortion rights supporters in Italy who question whether she will remain true to a pledge to respect a 1978 law guaranteeing access to the procedure, or will seek to push for stronger measures. Professor Leila Simona Talani heads the Italy Centre at King's College in London.
She's already done it, actually, in a region of Italy, in Marche, so she has already limited the right of women to perform abortion freely. In terms of non-traditional families, we already have no rights, basically. There is no right to marry, there is no right of adoption, and things will not simply not change. If not, they will be made worse. And the other thing is obviously their approach towards migrants, which is clear. This one is very, very open, and they have a very restrictive attitude towards migration. They want to restrict migratory policies as much as possible.
Giorgia Meloni must wait until next month to receive the formal invitation to form a government from Italy's president, but talks are already underway about assembling a cross-party team to lead the country. The main news again. President Biden says he fears there's been a substantial loss of life in Florida after Hurricane Ian left millions of people without power and the state's infrastructure reeling. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has condemned plans by Russia to annex occupied parts of Ukraine tomorrow. And British Prime Minister Liz Truss is under fire after a round of radio interviews aimed at defending her fiscal policies only created fresh questions about them. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
A reclusive deity hasn't written a new book in 2,000 years, and a local rescue dog is adopted for a couple weeks. This is the Onion Week in Review. This week, in a devastating blow to the nation's laundry, 16,000 Americans were reportedly stained during the messiest day in U.S. history. Reports confirm that nearly 3,000 citizens received permanent stains on their good shirt from mustard splatter off a dropped hot dog, along with 12,000 cases of spilled coffee and other dark beverages, ruining Americans' pair of hand-wash-only pants. Government officials further indicated that federal assistance for the nation's overwhelmed dry cleaners would be necessary. And in this week's local news, an elderly Rite Aid patron stretches out a conversation about toothpaste to prolong human contact. In other news, artifacts discovered buried in Washington, D.C. suggest humans once passed laws there. A self-centered child blames his parents' divorce entirely on himself. And a night of uninterrupted sleep really throws off a man's entire day.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. Welcome to the second hour. The phones are open here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here tonight it's Ian
and Mark.
We started, and we really didn't do much more than scratch the surface to talk about this poll that was done by the Boston Globe and Suffolk University that amongst your typical kind of questions about who are people voting for in this upcoming election, there was a question that was unexpected, and it was about the Free State Project, which is the migration of liberty-loving activists who have been coming here to New Hampshire for roughly 2 decades now at this point. And it was more of a question about awareness. How many people were aware of the Free State Project, and of those who were aware, how do they feel about it was kind of the question.
Before you go on, how did Chris Sununu do in this poll? Is he going to win?
According to the poll, he will be winning.
Okay.
That is the current governor of New Hampshire, for listeners that do not know that name.
Yes.
Why do you care?
I just like him.
Why?
I think
he's a politician. He's a scumbag. He told people they had to wear masks and stuff like that.
I lived through more than a decade of Democratic leadership in the state of New Hampshire. I watched them stop good bill after good bill, and he signed a few, and it makes me happy.
Yeah, but he's also a tyrant. Yeah, I mean, we can give him some credit for signing some things that, weren't terrible, and he has stopped some of the some of the worst gun laws or whatever. So, I mean, to his credit.
So he's already gone through the primary. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. He sailed through
the primary.
with 80%.
So he is the Republican candidate for governor, correct?
Yeah, he got through the primary with 80%.
So the option if he loses, is the Democrat. Is that correct?
Well, there's also a libertarian, maybe even two libertarians in the race for governor.
So the libertarian vote will be split in half, and therefore the Republican will definitely win. Not that there was really any question that the Republican was going to win anyway, or the Democrat will, right? So your real choice is voting for a Republican or voting for a Democrat. Now, I'll vote for the Republican in that circumstance.
That's the third. What do they call that? That's I forget what the term for that is. But if you actually believe in liberty, you should vote for the libertarian. And in fact, there's going to be a lot of people.
I didn't say that you shouldn't vote for them. I said that they were going to win. Right? Like, I don't get to vote in the New Hampshire election, but I can still root for whom I wish. In fact, I could live here.
The guy's still a tyrant.
I could vote for the libertarian, which I would, because I understand mathematics, but I can still root for Chris Sununu to win.
He may still be the lesser tyrant, Mark, compared to the other tyrant that's running, but he is a tyrant.
I will take the tyrant that gives me 2 lashes
he's not
to the
a cool
tyrant
guy.
that gives me 4 lashes.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but he's not a cool guy. He had people arrested outside of his house for having a peaceful candlelight vigil.
And I know how much that bothers you.
That doesn't bother you?
Not particularly.
Peaceful people with candles. They didn't even have a chance to get the candles out before the goon squad descended upon them.
I know how the state works. The state's an organization of violence. If you go and dance in front of its jaws, expect problems.
And this is a reason why you should leave New Hampshire, Mark, because you don't appreciate good activism. You don't stand up for good activists who are doing the right thing, and you actually say the guy who arrests these people, including 7 people who were at a meeting peacefully, where he was having a meeting to accept $27 million in federal funds to pimp COVID vaccines here in New Hampshire. He had people that, I don't know if you know them, but some of us know them, arrested for doing absolutely nothing.
What do you mean absolutely nothing?
They were sitting quietly in the audience.
With signs?
And they were arrested. No, not even with signs.
Then why were they arrested?
He wanted them to be taken out. He wanted them targeted. And they were. They had so many cops there that they had actually but they'd had like a curtain.
It sounds
in the
to me
back
like
of the
somebody's
room.
got a lawsuit that's going to work out very well in their favor.
I certainly hope so. They had a curtain in the back of the room that divided this large meeting room in roughly half, and then behind the curtain was an empty area. They were literally expecting to arrest dozens and dozens of people at this meeting where a couple hundred people attended to oppose, by the way, the acceptance of these funds. And Sununu had this planned out. He had a ton of cops on hand just to pull this thing off. They're called the New Hampshire 9, and there's actually, I believe, a court trial.
How many are left?
They're all 9 still facing charges in this particular case.
Brave people.
Yeah. So, look, I know you don't appreciate that kind of activism, Mark. You just think people should bend over and take it whenever the state's dealing it out. But I appreciate people who stand up.
I think that I would rather have the tyrant that gives 2 lashes than the tyrant that gives 4.
Okay.
I lived under
why
the
don't
Democratic.
you not call the tyrant a cool guy? Because he's not a cool guy. I think you did say something like that earlier.
I think I said yes.
Yeah, and then you said something like he's a cool guy or something like that. I don't remember exactly what the words were, but you acted like he was your buddy, and he's arresting your friends.
I have never spoken to him.
He's right. He's a scumbag. He's a politician. He does what interests him. He's apparently got money that he's. Let's see. There's alleged money laundering going on with this guy through the Gunstock Mountain camping area, which is run by the state, and is sloughing money into this guy's campaign coffers, apparently. And our friend Mike Sylvia, who's a listener of this show and a A+ rated state representative, uncovered that information. This guy who you like so much called for Mike Sylvia to lose the election. He called him by name in a press release saying that Mike Sylvia should lose the election because of what happened at Gunstock, and I presume also because of the secession bill as well. And you know what? Mike lost in the primary.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
So this guy who you like is going after people who are your direct supporters.
So what I said and what I believe is that he is the Republican running against the Democrat. If you ask me whether I want the Libertarian to win or not, I do. I don't even know who they are, and I want them to win. But I know they're not going to.
No, they're probably not going to.
And I was just wondering how he was polling against the Democrat.
Gotcha.
And he's beating the Democrat, and that gives me a small amount of joy.
The number here is 603-283-6160. So in this poll, they asked a question about the Free State Project. And as it turns out, most of the people who responded have never heard of it, 51%.
But you say most, but it's barely most. It's about, I think it's about half is the way to describe that.
Yep.
About half of the
a
people
majority.
in the state, and the likely voters in the state of New Hampshire have never heard of the Free State Project.
That's true. These are just likely voters. But when you break it down to the demographics, things get a little more interesting. When it comes to Democrats, it's actually more than half have heard of it. So 49% have not heard of it. 6% of Democrats who responded said they have a favorable opinion of the Free State Project, while 36%.
That's the 6 Liberty reps that are running as Democrats.
It was only 500-person survey, Mark, but 36% of Democrats have an unfavorable opinion, and 9% are not sure what they think. Republicans are split a little closer, with 14% favorable, 13% unfavorable, 11% don't have an opinion. And then independents are a little closer to the Democrats, with 10% favorable, 27% unfavorable, and 19%, a much larger chunk, undecided.
Do we know how many Democrats there were versus how many independents there were?
We do, yeah. There were roughly 188 independents, 152 Dems, and 149 Republicans.
Yeah, I was curious because this is one of those things that can go, because I would think that you would be more likely to see a bowl, like 250 independents, 125 Dems, and 125 Republicans in this. But apparently the independents are not quite as highly represented.
No, the independents here in New Hampshire are the plurality of the voters. They are not the majority of the voters.
Okay.
So there are more independents than there are Democrats, and there are more independents than there are Republicans. But there are not more independents than there are Democrats and Republicans combined. So this seems about right as far as the distribution is concerned. So those are the kind of the breakdowns on the parties. The other thing that I thought was interesting here was when you look at the people who've never heard of this, interestingly, more independents have heard of the Free State Project than Republicans or Democrats. It's 44% say they've never heard of it. Those are the independents who say they've never heard of it. 49% of Democrats say they've never heard of it. And 62% of Republicans say they've never heard of the Free State Project.
I'm not surprised with the Republican numbers. Now, you didn't ask me what I thought ahead of time, so I don't want to sound too much like a know-it-all. But you're more likely to hear of your enemies than your friends, right?
Yeah.
The Republicans are more likely to hear
Republicans.
About what's that?
And most Free Staters run as Republicans.
Yep. And you're more likely as a Republican to hear about George Soros's money is controlling this or that, right? And as a Democrat, you're more likely to hear about the Koch money.
Right.
You don't hear about that as much anymore, but these things tend to run on party lines.
If you want to weigh in here, your thoughts, 603-283-6160. So, Mark, you're a big skeptic. And does this mean something to you? Are these important numbers? I want to get into that coming up here.
Yeah, I want to talk about that.
The number 603-283-6160. Let's try not to get distracted from that conversation. There's more coming up here. It's Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it! You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better, too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, and the phones are open. If you want to join the show, you can bring up anything you want here. We're digging into some interesting polling numbers, asking people what they think about the Free State Project, specifically asking likely voters in New Hampshire, which of course is the destination for the Free State Project and has been for almost 2 decades now, as thousands of like-minded, liberty-oriented people, activists, hopefully, have migrated here to New Hampshire. Some more active than others, but still, we'll take you. If you just care about liberty and you want to live somewhere more free, you ought to probably move to New Hampshire. But if you don't care about liberty, if you want to control other people, if you want to lord power over other people's lives, you should be in places like Texas or California, New York, any other of the 49 states besides New Hampshire. New Hampshire is the place for libertarian activists. It's Ian and Mark here in the studio tonight, although Mark is saying there are some other options internationally that he's been exploring.
I think that Saipan, U.S. Marianas, is a freer place than New Hampshire.
But it wasn't good enough for you. You decided not to stay there.
It's pretty remote, and I like to travel.
So the number, if you want to join us here, is 603-283-6160. And by the way, things are getting worse from an economic perspective out there in, and not just the U.S., of course, but that's where we're located. There's a lot of problems. Of course, inflation is continuing as they continue to print out more government money, and that's pushing prices up. Well, one thing that has kept investors safer over the years when it comes to keeping up with inflation is precious metals like gold and silver, and bullionmax.com can help you acquire those things like gold ounces and silver ounces, and also the brand new gold back, which we're big fans of here on Free Talk Live. You can go to bullionmax.com/FTL. That'll take you right to their gold back information and sales pages. You don't have to talk to a salesperson at Bullion Max. You just order direct from bullionmax.com. Your precious metals will ship fully insured directly to your home. The gold backs are incredibly popular, by the way. These things are going fast, and the Wyomings just came out. So, it may be a very limited time before you can't get these things
I
anymore.
currently have every state that they have out.
Mm-hmm. Did you get the Wyoming?
In every denomination except for the Wyomings, and I'm going to have to get those.
They're gorgeous. Ask the captain; he's got a set of them already. But you can go to bullionmax.com/FTL. What are the goldbacks? They're beautiful, interchangeable gold money that you can actually carry in your wallet. So these are for people who don't just want to stack gold. If you want to stack gold, get some ounces, put them in a safe, bury them, whatever it is.
Bullion Max will help you with that too.
They sure will. And in fact, I was just looking the other day. I was just curious what's their ounce price. It's like roughly $100 over spot, and for an ounce, that seems to be more than fair, from what I understand. A lot of places you might be paying $200 over spot, but go, and your mileage may vary, obviously, because prices change all the time. But go to bullionmax.com/FTL. Goldbacks are for people that actually want to use gold. You want to use it to buy things, buy and sell, use it on a daily or as an occasional basis, tip with them, give them as gifts. They're really useful. Check it out at bullionmax.com/FTL. So one takeaway from this, Mark, that I thought was interesting was they actually did break down in the demographics on this question about the Free State Project, where they asked New Hampshire likely voters whether they've heard of the Free State Project, and if they have heard of it, whether it's a favorable opinion that somebody has or unfavorable. And the overall numbers were 51% had never heard of it, 10% said they were favorable towards it, 26% said unfavorable, which was made up of mostly independents and Democrats, Republicans more favorable than those groups. And then those who are who have heard of but are not sure how they feel about it, 13%. Again, those are the overall numbers. But when you break down by area, now they didn't separate the West from the North. They kept them together, which is a huge discrepancy. So
they did it by congressional district.
Perhaps.
The congressional district is basically the West and the North.
But they also broke out Hillsborough County, Rockingham County, which are some of the more central and eastern
So they just
counties.
took the less populated areas and called them all one thing.
They did West, North, Central, CTRL, Hillsborough, and Rockingham. So they had four different geographical regions.
And Rockingham has what town, and is that where Fort Smith is?
I think that's the seacoast.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure on that. There's only 10 counties in New Hampshire, so there's not a whole lot to calculate. But so we were looking at the numbers of people who had never heard of the Free State Project, and the area in which the most people have heard of the Free State Project is the West and the North.
Okay.
Like a significant number more. So 35% had never heard of the Free State Project out here. And so we're talking about 65% who had heard of the Free State Project, compared to in the other areas, 58% never heard in the Central, 55% in Hillsborough, 54% in Rockingham. So relatively similar in the rest of the areas of the state, but a lot more had heard of it out here. So, of course, then the question becomes, well, given that so many more people in this area had heard of it, are there favorable, unfavorable, percentages significantly different? And
I would guess more unfavorable.
Not so much.
No?
There is some more unfavorable, but there's also some more favorable.
My thought was that that you'd see less favorability in the West and more favorability in the North.
That's probably true. But of those who had heard of us, 12% said they were favorable towards the Free State Project, whereas in the other areas it was 7%, 13%, 7% and 9%. So generally more people were favorable towards it, and also generally more people were unfavorable towards it. So more people were making up their minds. 33% said they were unfavorable, whereas in the other areas it's 24, 23, 23, and 24, 23, and 23. So, but also at the same time, more people were also undecided as well. So 20% here were undecided.
But they've heard about you, so undecided. Yeah. And I think that's to me. I don't even know how I would answer this if I got the call. I would probably say favorable. But I mean, geez, there's good and bad that goes with the Free State Project.
Of course there are.
So
that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. Was like the general takeaways from this. Do you think that
I think the general takeaway is that 90% of Granite Staters do not have a favorable opinion of the Free State Project? Is the first thing that you should say.
But most of them have no opinion because they don't know anything about it.
Right, no opinion. Half of them have no opinion. Half of them are undecided. It's not that they don't know. They've just,
not half. About 13%.
Yeah,
are undecided.
13% undecided. About 10% have a favorable opinion. About
26%
more than double that. So 150% more.
Is this the death knell for the Free State Project?
No. The Free Staters aren't going to listen to this. They don't care. And many of them are like you. All publicity is good publicity.
This isn't even getting any news. It's not even included in the Boston Globe
But this
story.
is news about publicity. Like, this is what your market penetration is. And what I'm going to say is...
the Free State Project isn't advertising to people in New Hampshire. It's not trying to reach the people in New Hampshire.
Well,
the people
they're
that are
not trying to
advertising...
keep it a secret to people in New Hampshire either.
Well, you can't. Not when the Democrats are writing letters to the editor, opinion pieces. They're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars probably on hate mailers that are going out about the Free State Project. There's a huge push this year, unlike anything I've ever seen, to out Free Staters as Free Staters, to identify them, and to attack them with various different pieces of media that are being leveled against them. So this is the biggest attack against the Free State Project we've seen, and it's going to be very interesting to see how many people make it through the general election, those who might have been, for instance, endorsed by the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance. There's a huge anti-FSP push right now, so we're going to see how it plays out in the coming months. More coming up.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. President Biden says he fears there has been a substantial loss of life in Florida after Hurricane Ian slammed ashore yesterday, leaving millions of people without power and the state's infrastructure reeling. More than 2 million customers are without electricity. There has been extensive flooding and devastation of property after the storm barreled across central Florida on its way to the Atlantic Ocean. President Biden spoke during a visit to the headquarters of FEMA, the federal government's emergency management agency.
It made landfall yesterday, and it is still moving across the state today. This could be the deadliest hurricane in Florida's history. The numbers are still unclear, but we're hearing early reports of what may be substantial loss of life.
And the president pledged a full government response to the storm. He spoke today with Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis, and President Biden says he will visit Florida and Puerto Rico in the next few days. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is condemning plans by Russia to declare the annexation of occupied parts of Ukraine tomorrow. Guterres says the annexation will have no legal standing and goes against the United Nations Charter.
The Russian Federation is one of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, shares a particular responsibility to respect the Charter. Any decision to proceed with the annexation of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia, regions of Ukraine, would have no legal value and deserves to be condemned.
British Prime Minister Liz Truss is under fire again in the UK after a round of radio interviews aimed at defending her fiscal policies only created fresh questions about them. But the Prime Minister indicated she will not change course, despite IMF demands that her tax-cutting proposals be withdrawn. FSN's London Bureau Chief Laura Macon-Isherwood with the latest.
UK Prime Minister Liz Truss claims her government is pulling all the levers to drive economic growth. In the short term, however, the economy is in flux. The pound tanked after the headlines of her Chancellor's mini-budget broke, prompting so much concern that on Wednesday the Bank of England announced it would start buying government bonds in a bid to bring stability to the market. Banks and other lenders have continued to pull mortgage products as interest rates rise and concerns grow about loan affordability down the line. Prime Minister Truss, though, maintains she had to take what she calls decisive action and says she's prepared to take controversial decisions. Laura Macon-Isherwood, London.
Major strike action has been taking place in France today. 3 of the country's main unions are calling for salary rises in the face of the country's runaway inflation. They are also demanding a halt to pension reform. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Your comments on the Free State Project and the new numbers that are coming out here in a poll from the Boston Globe and Suffolk University that are saying that, well, of the people who are aware of the Free State Project, and a slim majority are not aware of it here in New Hampshire, at least among likely voters. Of those who are aware of it, there's not that many that are favorable towards it, and more that are unfavorable towards it. In fact, at least twice as many, more than twice, 2.5 times as many of respondents were unfavorable as compared to favorable. But does that actually mean anything? And my argument on this one is that, I mean, obviously we would love for the numbers to be reversed, because, I mean, who doesn't want to be liked?
Sure.
But people who are trying to change things are inevitably going to find a lot of resistance. There are going to be people who do not appreciate that.
Especially people who are by definition the outsider, right?
Yeah.
Like
Flatlanders.
There's in-group and out-group dynamics within the human primate, and that's just the way it is. So when you go to a place like the Free Staters have, and more or less it's a declaration that, hey, dummies, I'm here to fix your system. Let the applause begin. Let the fanfare begin. Fire up the fireworks. Your savior is here, right? Like there's a lot of that kind of goes on, And Free Staters, they're bulls in a china shop, or have been historically. There's certainly some things that can be pointed at. I'm not saying every Free Stater by any stretch. As a matter of fact, 99% of Free Staters are probably, unrecognizable and uninteresting to your average Grand Estater, but that 1% is loud enough. You're in that 1%, Ian. Loud enough and interesting enough that they get a lot of news items.
Yeah.
There's
and a lot of people are opinionated.
There
about
appears to be a blog here called New Hampshire Journal, which is centered entirely around getting you thrown to prison.
I haven't seen that.
New Hampshire Journal.
I mean, I've seen their reporting. I don't know if I agreed that it's surrounding.
I think that they're riding on your wave in many ways. They know that you're a divisive figure. And
good for them. They should do whatever they can to get some eyes on their articles.
Yep.
If they think it's going to work for them to write about me, then that's great. I actually do interviews with one of the reporters there on a regular basis. So, yeah, I mean, whatever. I don't care about that. So anyway, back to the question about the Free State Project, because it's not about me. I'm just one of many people who've migrated here, and yes, I am somewhat visible, but there's a lot of other people who are doing a lot more to work inside the system and actually change things. We live in Keene, New Hampshire, where we know we have no chance of winning any elections out here. So we've just been doing things like civil disobedience and Bitcoin-related activism, economic. We've been focusing more on the economic side of things in recent years here in Keene, and have turned Keene into one of the top Bitcoin destinations. So our activism, there's no doubt, has been quite successful. And again, the Free State Project doesn't market itself actively within New Hampshire. So the Free State Project is only interested in recruiting libertarians to migrate to New Hampshire. And look, as you pointed out, Mark, a lot of the people that move here are not Free Staters. They are libertarians who do not want to join the Free State Project. They're not joiners. They don't see any benefit in joining a group.
I don't see any benefit joining the Free State Project. At this point, the Free State Project has hit its 20,000 number. Yeah. And in my opinion, if I was asked, are you a Free Stater or are you not a Free Stater, I would prefer to be able to answer, no, I am not.
Well, didn't you resign?
I have left the Free State Project. I have fulfilled whatever.
I resigned from it at one time, and so if I'm asked that question, then I am telling the truth when I say I'm not. I moved here for the Free State Project, but I'm no longer a official Free Stater.
Well, but that's a volunteering information if you say that you moved here for it and you're no longer. Yeah, that's not the
question they're asking.
The answer to the question, are you a Free Stater, is no. And I believe I've asked to be removed from the numbers, but it's been years at this point since I've left the Free State Project. Literally sold my house, moved out of the state. So I couldn't tell you precisely, but I know that they don't keep track of the numbers of people who leave. So
yeah, the only question really is, are the activists themselves making an impact? And I think that there's no doubt that the activists are making an impact. Does that upset some people? Of course, it's going to upset some people. The people who are the most upset by it are the ones that love the government. They love big government. They hate the Free Staters. They're on the attack against the Free Staters. And if there's a negative viewpoint about Free Staters out there, I think a lot of it comes from the haters. A lot of the haters, they've been here for decades. They've got influence within the system. By the way, a lot of these anti-Free Stater people also moved here.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of them did.
Yeah, they're all flat.
Yeah.
They tend to be flatlanders.
Hard leftists that came from places like New York and Connecticut and elsewhere, even California in many places, to try
in many cases to change the state, which as evidenced by their activity within their
many
political
of them
party,
have been elected
to change the state into whatever their view is.
There's a bunch of these people, some of the loudest. There's a bunch of state reps on Twitter that complain every single day about Free Staters. It is their thing now to caterwaul about how terrible the Free State Project is, and they're talking about, they've come here to do this, and well, so did y'all. Most of these leftist legislators were not born here in New Hampshire. Every single time somebody checks, they weren't born here in New Hampshire, and they're talking about how Free Staters are an invasive
as if where you're born should matter, but it does. And that's kind of the thing is that this is the hypocrisy that goes into this. If you're complaining about Free Staters, you're complaining about people who have picked up and moved and gotten involved in the political process. Some of them had to be convinced, by the way. It's not like all of them picked up and moved to be involved in the political process. Many of them had to be convinced to do so. And what's the difference between them and you?
They love the state.
Yeah, right. They're here to protect the teachers' unions. Well, the Free Staters are here to protect the New Hampshire way of life. So I can make all the arguments. It's just that I understand humans, right? Like humans are much more instinct and emotion than they are logic. And speaking logic to a person who's not feeling logical generally doesn't work. A la Sam Harris. But it's just not going to, it's probably not going to have the result that you want to have. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to appeal to that visceral, emotional thing when they, in fact, are the same hypocrite. But the people who are here really want to hear this, they don't care, right? Like, welcome to people who want to support me. But what you have to remember, people who want these Democrats to come, is that there's Republicans and Libertarians that want Republicans and Libertarians here. So,
well, and the numbers show that at least in 2021, the New Hampshire Republican Party published some numbers that came from the Secretary of State's office. So these are the elections people. These are the people that deal with, who got registered to vote and who died. Removing people from the voters' rolls, things like that. That's the things that those folks deal with. And they ran the numbers as to who in the year 2021 signed up to vote. Right? Because you can vote in New Hampshire, unlike a lot of states. You can go to the polls on voting day. You can sign up to vote right then and vote right then. So how many people over the year of 2021 signed up to vote? Turns out it was mostly Republicans that did. In fact, the number of Republicans signing voters was much larger. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it was like significantly larger than the number of new Democratic registered voters. So it seems like there's a trend towards more red state.
As a critic of the Free State Project, and I will critique it on a regular basis, I believe the Democrats are going to lose. That the smart Democrat today moves someplace that they're going to be happier. That may be Vermont.
We're seeing that happen, by the way. There's some of the more visible Democrat influencers, if you will, have left New Hampshire. There was a guy that had a blog called Blue Hampshire at one time.
Blue Hampshire left? Good.
He's gone.
See ya.
I think he moved to Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, he's going to be happier there.
Yeah.
He's gonna, Portland, it's a perfect place for a lefty like that.
Exactly. And there's more to that.
I hope he went to the Chaz and had all his food stolen by the homeless.
Migration. And we'll talk about that here because people are migrating in, but also some people are leaving, and there are a lot of people we want to see leave. It's Free Talk Live. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, Mark at freetalklive.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
When you got your health, I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. Have you seen the TV commercials for Good RX? It's a website and app that comparison shops for prescription meds. One catch, it only works if you're paying without insurance. My pal Larry doesn't go to a dentist. He lets university dental students hone their clinical repertoire on him. Yes, it is less expensive, and insurance still covers it. One trade-off he's quick to add: plan on spending the whole morning there because students' work is so closely supervised. Because it's a university, he figures he's getting state-of-the-art care. And when I asked about rookie mistakes, Larry said the students are gentle. Just don't let the faculty in there. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We're talking about the Free State Project and a recent poll that was done. I was actually able to dig up even more numbers than I had initially come across about who thinks the Free State Project is a good idea versus not. But in my opinion, ultimately, while this poll is interesting, it is not going to stop the migration. It is not.
I don't think it
going
will
to
either, and
slow it
I'm
down.
Counted among the biggest critics of the Free State Project.
Yeah. If, by the way, you want to join us online, don't forget we've got all kinds of features on our website. You can go to freetalklive.com, interact with other Free Talk Live listeners there. It's Ian and Mark here in the studio tonight. One of the things you can do on our website is subscribe via our podcast. Just go to feeds.freetalklive.com. And you will find the various different links there, including our RSS feed that you can pop into any podcast client out there, whatever it is that you prefer, whether it be on your phone or your desktop or laptop computer. You can use that feed. Or if you're already on one of those platforms like Spotify or iHeartMedia, those things, we've got links to our show that are already there, so you can just plug us in however you do that, subscribe via those systems. We got handy links for you there.
And if you use those systems, might I suggest, please leave a review.
Yeah, if that's an option, please do.
Surprisingly effective for us and is really, really great. We've had some internal workings here at Free Talk Live with our podcast that have resulted in our numbers, which were what they call them. What was the highest level? It wasn't elite. It was. I
have no idea.
Do you remember what Spotify? When we were talking to them on the phone, they had some term for what the elite level of podcast up there with Joe Rogan.
Us.
Yes, it was. We were the highest level.
It is. We're nowhere near Joe Rogan.
We're nowhere near Joe Rogan, but when you're, the top 10 tennis players, one of them can be very, very high.
We're not in the top 10, bro.
I'm not claiming we're in the top 10.
Okay.
I'm claiming
we'd be lucky to be in the top 100.
Whatever this top level of podcasts is, and that we had this hit that resulted in, sort of getting knocked down some. And I'd like it if we got some more downloads. So please,
thanks.
Leave a review. Make sure you're downloading, that kind of thing.
Feeds.freetalklive.com will take you to that page where you can get some more information and get following us there. So we're just kind of digging apart some of these numbers here, but we were just talking about the overall. I did find some more information here, and it turns out the more educated, quote unquote, which of course means just the more years you spend in government indoctrination, that you are in New Hampshire, if you're a likely voter, the less favorable you are towards the Free State Project. 40% of college graduates are against the Free State Project. They find it unfavorable. 40% also have never heard of it. 11% found it favorable, and 9% were undecided of college graduates. When you go to master's degree, PhD, so a higher level of college,
it gets worse.
No, it's actually not worse. It's 35% that are unfavorable.
I see.
In that particular case. Actually, a couple more percentage of master's degree people favor it, with 13% there. And when it comes to income, if you have a higher income, you might be a little bit more unfavorable towards the Free State Project, according to these numbers. Union people, more unfavorable, with 40% unfavorable compared to 23% that are not union members.
The Democrat types appreciate people using the democratic system as it exists?
No, as it turns out, they really don't.
Oh,
no.
okay.
No, and for all the Democrats that talk about immigration as though they care about immigration, they don't want to see Free Staters immigrating.
Yeah, they just want to see Democrats immigrating.
Correct. Correct. So again, if you want to weigh in here, the number is 603-283-6160. Ultimately, what matters is whether or not the Free Staters are effective, and they are effective. And one of the reasons why, you touched on it, Mark, without, I don't think we didn't expand on this. And as you said, you're a critic of the Free State Project, but even you can acknowledge that the Republican Party in New Hampshire is literally dying of old age.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been to the meetings. You've seen it, right?
Sure. I think that's probably true everywhere, but yeah.
Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. But it is definitely true here in Cheshire County, New Hampshire, where if somebody walks into that meeting that's under the age of 50, they do all but put on the party hats and start celebrating.
Well, until they realize it's a Free Stater and they don't want to say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I get that. I get that. But they really are happy when somebody who's under retirement age shows up to one of their meetings, because that's how old these people are. And I've never been to one of the Democrat meetings, but I bet you they're not that different. I certainly was at the protest. They had a protest here that the Cheshire County Democrats put together. This was specifically an anti-Free State Project protest that they put together with 30 people, at least that I counted, attending, and almost every one of them was probably over the age of 60. There were 2 younger guys that were straight out of the Communist Party that were there, and that was it. Everybody else was white hair, elderly folks. So the political parties here in New Hampshire are aging, and that is a weakness for them. So what you're going to start seeing happen, if it hasn't already started, is Free Staters are going to be infiltrating the Democratic Party as well. We're starting to get to the point where there's enough Free Staters moving here into New Hampshire. The Republicans been pretty infiltrated at this point, and they know it. They know that there's Free Staters everywhere.
They're not. I mean, at this point, they've made peace with it.
Some have. They kind of tried to push us out here in Cheshire County in the Keene area a couple of years ago, right before the raid happened. Actually, they pushed everybody out of the Keene party.
Okay.
And so, but for the most part, they understand that they have to deal with it. And one of the reasons why is if you run as a Republican candidate and you're not a Free Stater, then you better hope to get their support, because there's a significant number of Free Staters within the Republican Party. And they're going to work either for you or they're going to work against you.
Right. They're the activists, and activists have their value. I've seen it time and again. The Republicans grumble under their breath about the Free Staters, and then it's like, oh, well, we got to get this thing done. Call the Free Staters.
Yeah, because they don't want the Democrat to win.
Right.
So there's some real political influence. And, of course, the Free Staters, many of them have been elected. There's a few dozen of them in the state house right now. And Mark, as critical as you are of the political process, and I am too, it's slow, it's expensive, it's stupid. You heard me talking off the air about how I don't like to donate to politics. I think it's a waste of money, honestly. But I can't deny the fact that they've gotten people elected, and I can't deny the fact that many of them are A and A+ rated.
It feels
state
like
reps.
with your money, you don't get what you paid for.
No, you
with
never
it.
do.
But the evidence is, like in Washington D.C., that it's something like it's 10% less to work within the. It's a tenth as much, or thereabouts as far as number. Tenth as much to work within the political process as is to work within the media process, convincing people of things. So if you were trying to go against climate change, rather than convincing somebody of that sort of thing, just giving money to politicians and lobbying, that works. Now, I don't think that works as well in New Hampshire because lobbyists just aren't as effective here.
Well, there's 400 state reps, so you'd have to buy a hell of a lot more people if that's what you were going to try to do.
And
which I don't recommend you do.
They're also not the lawyer industrial complex here.
Correct.
They
They're
get
not
paid
$100. They're basically volunteers. They're glorified volunteers that get a gas stipend, essentially, and that's about it. So there's no doubt that the Free State Project has been successful electorally. There's no one in the Free State Project who believes the Free State Project is in charge of anything in the State House. But the Democrats sure want you to think that's the case. Their propaganda that they've been pushing out there over the last few months in this election season has been alleging that the Free State Project controls the Republican Party, that the Free State Project essentially controls the State House. I mean, there's all kinds of just ridiculous statements these people are making. There's no doubt that the Free State Project has been successful. I mean, the House Majority Leader is a migrant. He is Jason Osborne, who is a former sponsor here on Free Talk Live. He's a Free State Project early mover. So, I mean, there have been some successes. A lot of the Free Staters that are in the State House, some of them are heads of committees. Right? So they've moved into influential roles within the Republican Party and within the State House, and that you can't take that away from them, but they're still not the majority. I mean, Free Staters are maybe 40 out of 400, maybe 10%. Now, that is enough to swing a vote.
That's Free Staters, but there are people that I think in the same article that I read, the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, A and B rated reps.
Well, that's most of the Republicans at that point.
Right. And I think it was at
But they're not libertarians.
Those 100 of the 400?
Most of the Republicans are A and B rated, absolutely. But that doesn't mean that
I don't know if it was most, but okay.
B rated does not mean you're a libertarian. It just means you vote more often than you don't with the libertarians.
Well, I mean, I'll take that.
Yeah, I'll take it too, but I'm not going to call them libertarians. I'm not going to call them Free Staters.
We have my prediction in the last minute here. My prediction is the Free State Project, or libertarians in New Hampshire, let's use that terminology, will be successful in rolling back the state to some extent. and that rolling back will do the things that we say that does. That means increasing longevity, increasing happiness, increasing prosperity. That the people across the borders in Maine, Vermont, Massachusetts will see these things, want these things for themselves, move in and continue voting the way that they always did, and then undermine in the next generation everything that we did.
The evidence is against what you're saying. And there's more coming up here. I'll explain it on the way, and you can join the show as well. 603-283-6160. This is Free Talk Live.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. President Biden says he fears there has been a substantial loss of life in Florida after Hurricane Ian slammed ashore yesterday, leaving millions of people without power and the state's infrastructure reeling. More than 2 million customers are without electricity. There has been extensive flooding and devastation of property after the storm barreled across central Florida on its way to the Atlantic Ocean. President Biden spoke during a visit to the headquarters of FEMA, the federal government's emergency management agency.
It made landfall yesterday, and it is still moving across the state today. This could be the deadliest hurricane in Florida's history. The numbers are still unclear, but we're hearing early reports of what may be substantial loss of life.
And the president pledged a full government response to the storm. He spoke today with Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis, and President Biden says he will visit Florida and Puerto Rico in the next few days. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is condemning plans by Russia to declare the annexation of occupied parts of Ukraine tomorrow. Guterres says the annexation will have no legal standing and goes against the United Nations Charter.
The Russian Federation is one of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, shares a particular responsibility to respect the Charter. Any decision to proceed with the annexation of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson and Zaporizhia, regions of Ukraine, would have no legal value and deserves to be condemned.
British Prime Minister Liz Truss is under fire again in the UK after a round of radio interviews aimed at defending her fiscal policies only created fresh questions about them. But the Prime Minister indicated she will not change course, despite IMF demands that her tax-cutting proposals be withdrawn. FSN's London Bureau Chief Laura Macon-Isherwood with the latest.
UK Prime Minister Liz Truss claims her government is pulling all the levers to drive economic growth. In the short term, however, the economy economy is in flux. The pound tanked after the headlines of her Chancellor's mini-budget broke, prompting so much concern that on Wednesday the Bank of England announced it would start buying government bonds in a bid to bring stability to the market. Banks and other lenders have continued to pull mortgage products as interest rates rise and concerns grow about loan affordability down the line. Prime Minister Truss, though, maintains she had to take what she calls decisive action and says she's prepared to take controversial decisions. Laura Macon-Isherwood, London.
Major strike action has been taking place in France today. 3 of the country's main unions are calling for salary rises in the face of the country's runaway inflation. They are also demanding a halt to pension reform. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, concluding our look this week at the woman poised to become Italy's next Prime Minister, far-right leader Giorgia Meloni, whose coalition won last week's elections in the country. Today, a look at her social policies and what they will mean. She defines herself as a woman, a mother and a Christian, and her election win has already sparked protests by abortion rights supporters in Italy who question whether she will remain true to a pledge to respect a 1978 law guaranteeing access to the procedure, or will seek to push for stronger measures. Professor Leila Simona Talani heads the Italy Centre at King's College in London.
She's already done it, actually, in a region of Italy, in Marche, so she has already limited the right of women to perform abortion freely. In terms of non-traditional families, we already have no rights, basically. There is no right to marry, there is no right of adoption, and things will not simply not change. If not, they will be made worse. And the other thing is obviously their approach towards migrants, which is clear. This one is very, very open, and they have a very restrictive attitude towards migration. They want to restrict migratory policies as much as possible.
Giorgia Meloni must wait until next month to receive the formal invitation to form a government from Italy's president, but talks are already underway about assembling a cross-party team to lead the country. The main news again. President Biden says he fears there's been a substantial loss of life in Florida after Hurricane Ian left millions of people without power and the state's infrastructure reeling. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has condemned plans by Russia to annex occupied parts of Ukraine tomorrow. And British Prime Minister Liz Truss is under fire after a round of radio interviews aimed at defending her fiscal policies only created fresh questions about them. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
Studies show that more and more teenagers are leaving Facebook, but where are they going instead? Apparently to the hottest new social media site in years, the comment section of this YouTube video of a deer running in slow motion. Already, its comment section is seeing over 30 million active users. Facebook isn't giving up so easily, incorporating images and videos of deer, elk, reindeer, and even moose into their layout. But teens say that misses the point entirely. In fact, the site's one unwritten rule: don't post anything about the video itself. Teens say that's not cool. But with more and more people swapping over to the comments section of the slow motion deer video by the day, some trend watchers warn it may begin going the way of Facebook.
I was obsessed with it for a while, but now it's just boring. I'm probably going to switch over to Happy Fast Kitchen.
While we don't know for sure, we believe Happy Fast Kitchen might refer to the Yelp page for a Chinese food restaurant in Cleveland, the new social media site where musician Skrillex recently dropped his latest album.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, and we're kicking off the third hour of the program. The phones are open if you want to join us here. Number 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Ian.
And Mark.
We've actually spent the first 2 hours of the show talking about the migration of people here to New Hampshire, the Free State Project, some of the alternatives that are out there. Mark brought up these international alternatives that he's been working on developing, and there's one that has yet to be announced, I guess, that you teased earlier tonight, Mark. That one at some point will be announced, maybe this year, Maybe not.
Hoping.
That all depends, but you'll let us know, I'm sure, as soon as you know that. So there's interesting alternatives out there, but for the average libertarian that wants to make a difference, in my opinion, they ought to migrate here to New Hampshire. We've been going over some of the polling numbers in a recent poll that just came out by the Boston Globe and Suffolk University, where they asked some likely New Hampshire voters how they felt about the Free State Project, among other sort of typical political questions about who people are voting for and that sort of thing. And turns out that the slim majority of people who are likely voters have never heard of the Free State Project. But of those who have, 2.5 times as many are opposed to, or they're unfavorable towards the Free State Project as those who are favorable. We actually have a gentleman on the line who is one of those state representatives. We talked about how there's a few dozen state reps that are free staters, so-called, people who migrated here for more liberty. His name is Keith Ammon. He's formerly, I believe, one of the directors of the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, and I believe, I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say you were probably an A-plus rated rep on the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance ratings, if not this year, previous years. Keith, welcome to Free Talk Live.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You'll always be the president of the NHLA to me, Keith.
Thank you, Mark. Hey, and congratulations to Ian. I heard you got married.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate that. This is a setup call. You didn't just happen to hear the conversation about the Free State Project and call in. Mark, you had asked Keith to call in specifically about a thing. But while we have you here, Keith, I do want to get your opinion. Have you heard anything about this poll that I mentioned a moment ago, where it shows, how many people in New Hampshire know about the Free State Project and are favorable or unfavorable towards it?
Yeah, I saw something briefly earlier on Twitter. I didn't see the breakdown, but I suspected that, it's angry Democrats who are filling out that number of unfavorables because they see how effective we are in the State House and, working with Republicans and other allies.
Certainly the Democrats are more highly represented in the unfavorable column.
Are they on the attack against you? I'd mentioned that there's a huge push against the Free State Project by the Democrats, these sort of established Democrats. They're spending tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars.
From out of state, these political activists that come from out of state in order to act within the political process are angry that people have come from out of state to act within the political process.
Are they targeting you specifically this election?
They have many times in the past, until the point I just run ads that say, hey, I moved here for the Free State Project. And, it's basically a billboard on the internet advertising New Hampshire as the place where people care about freedom.
I've always felt that way, too. When they come out with, I know that Granite State Progress is one of these anti-freedom groups here in New Hampshire, also run by...
They actually had a meeting a couple of years ago in my town and attacking me and another person in town. So the whole meeting was about how Keith Ammon was a dangerous person living in town
and full of lies. Like they'll say anything they can get away with.
Totally.
Yeah, I heard recently one of these meetings that they're still having things like this where they're just bad mouthing every free stater within earshot. They accused Carla Garrick of being a racist or something like that, and she's like she worked against racism.
She was an anti-apartheid activist in South
Africa. Yeah. So the best tactic is to just feed their paranoia and let them just seem like crazy conspiracy theorists. And, they try to sow division between, Republicans and, people that moved here for the Free State Project. It's just not working behind the scenes because we're natural allies on a lot of things. My view of the Free State Project is the whole point of it is to affect government policy at the state level. That's the whole point. And so if your activism is aligned, to do it directly, if you have the luxury of running for office or supporting somebody that is, or supporting the NHLA, because changing state policy is so powerful, it creates a filter effect on who moves here and who leaves, right?
This was the point I'd forgotten and I was going to make to Mark, because Mark's big prediction is he thinks the Free State Project is going to work, that the New Hampshire is going to become freer because of the efforts here, and that is going to attract people to move here that are then going to inadvertently change it back because they're going to bring their statist ways in. And I think what you're touching on here, and I'll let you expand on it, but we've seen evidence of not only how some of the most influential leftists and statists are leaving New Hampshire, but they're signaling at the same time. They're saying, hey, progressives, if you like progressivism, you don't want to be in New Hampshire. They're carrying guns. They're crazy. There's all this sort of anti-New Hampshire messaging out there.
Does that work in
Texas?
Texas? Because the leftists are moving from California to Texas.
What do you think, Keith?
Well, they moved to like Austin. They moved to like, places where, I don't think they're going to turn Texas blue, if that's what you mean. But
they'll make another big blue dot in it, though. Dallas and Austin.
Yeah, they will. So I think it was Andrew Breitbart that said, I believe, that politics is downstream from culture, but it's really like a loop. It's really, they feed off of each other, right? So you can affect culture a lot by, changing policy at the state level. And, I think that's, that's kind of the point.
I also think that when you say that Republicans and Libertarians are natural allies on the state level.
In New Hampshire.
Well, on the state level, I think is probably.
But also in New Hampshire, and I think, Keith, you're about to say something about that, right? Aren't the Republicans here just sort of naturally more libertarian than elsewhere?
Right. So you really have to distinguish between the national Republican brand, which is one thing, and to me that's more like George Bush invading Iraq. That's maybe that makes me old, but at the state level, Republicans are much more naturally, leave me alone types. And so New Hampshire Republicans is a whole different breed and brand than national Republicans. And I think that's been that way for a long time.
Yeah, even before the Free State Project, because I remember it was, I think, really early on in the migration here that it was Republican state representatives who made the difference on voting when it came to gay marriage being a thing here in New Hampshire.
I remember that. Yeah,
it was Republicans who made that happen.
Made it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Keith, you called tonight to speak specifically to an issue of sort of national import. What was it?
Yeah, so it's very interesting. Being a political nerd, I pay attention to a lot of things that maybe other people are too busy leading a normal life to pay attention to. But
we need that.
In New Hampshire, we have this. Yeah, we have this thing called the First of the Nation primary, and New Hampshire adopted some laws 100 years ago to kind of cement our place as the first primary to happen for the presidential election. And there's a real chance that after the general election in November, because the Democrat Party delayed their decision, that the Democrats might either dilute, they might have other states go at the same time, or they may, bump New Hampshire down the line. And it's really significant because a lot of outside money and activism comes into our state, once every 4 years to the lead up to the first presidential primary. And if the Democrats lose that influence nationally, that would be significant. The Democrats up until this point have been almost allergic to the ideas of liberty. They put up a pretty fierce response to it, and a lot of this outside money backs up, what they're able to do and what they're able to influence. So if they lose First of the Nation status, that's pretty significant.
Here's what I want to know.
Can you walk me through how that happens?
Yeah, because I thought it was a law in New Hampshire that New Hampshire has to have this. So can you hang on, Keith, and stick with us for another segment? Sure. All right, more with Keith Ammon. He's one of the state representatives here. He's a migrant. He moved here as part of the Free State Project.
Former president of the NHLA.
Very effective. He's one of the big guys behind the blockchain freedom community here. He's sponsored some bills that have been successful, from what I understand, at attaining some more blockchain, Bitcoin, crypto-related freedoms. More coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Inflation, a sidelined labor force, and ever-increasing interest rates. It's the perfect storm for pushing the U.S. economy over the edge. Savvy investors are diversifying into gold and silver with BullionMax.com. You can buy direct from BullionMax.com without talking to a salesperson, and your precious metals will ship fully insured directly to your home. Free Talk Live listeners can now order one of BullionMax's most popular products, the Goldback. Now in stock, but supplies are going fast. To get your Goldbacks, go to BullionMax.com/FTL. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 15th through the 18th for the 7th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out in 2022. For 2023, we're going back to where it all started, the weekend before PorcFest. ForkFest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 15th through the 18th. You can find out more at the unofficial website forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the ForkFest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the ForkFest forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 15th through the 18th. forkfest.party. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Free speech is protected on the internet, right? Not always. Government agencies try to limit free speech and commerce on the net. Luckily, when they do, the Institute for Justice is there to defend your First Amendment right to free speech. IJ helped set the first federal precedent for internet free speech in 1999, and ever since has worked to prevent unconstitutional roadblocks in cyberspace. Visit our website today at ij.org.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. Phones are open. You can join us here. It's Ian and Mark in the studio. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And I want to say thanks to listeners like Libertaria, who is a Free Talk Live supporter of our AMPS program. AMPS stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. So if you like what we do here on Free Talk Live, you can join AMPS at amps.freetalklive.com. You can do it with your credit card, debit card, through Patreon. Also, they accept PayPal. And it's a way for you to get behind the show, advertise, market, promote, and support. You get some perks. You get access to the commercial-free, or at least recorded commercial-free, podcast that we have that has the full radio show. So if if the daily digest that we have that's nearly an hour a day, 7 days a week, isn't enough for you, you want an extra 7 hours or whatever of content
per week,
per week, then please, you can sign up for the AMPS program at amps.freetalklive.com. You get access to a special custom RSS feed through Patreon that does just that for you. So that's one of the perks. There's some other benefits. You can go to amps.freetalklive.com and learn more about that. We're going to go back to the phones here. Keith Ammon is with us. He's a state representative here in New Hampshire, multi-term state rep. How many terms what term are you on right now, Keith?
I'm actually running. I was talking to my wife about this today. I'm running for the 5th time in an election. This will be my 4th term if I win. So I 75% win record.
All right, nice
so far.
And you were getting into talking about this first in the nation primary. That's pretty much all that a lot of people even know about New Hampshire.
It's one of the things that sets New Hampshire apart.
Most people don't know where we're located, but they've heard that there's a first in the nation primary.
And the fact is, this is not even the first vote. Iowa caucuses before New Hampshire, but the branding is so strong with the first in the nation primary, asterisk, that that's what people know. They know New Hampshire's first.
But apparently there's some talk amongst the Democrats about no longer being first in the nation, and I guess what I don't understand is I'd always heard that there was an actual statute, that New Hampshire has it in its statutes that it must be the first in the nation primary. So how could the Democrats change that without being in charge of the State House?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Just a quick word on the Iowa caucuses. I don't know if you remember in 2020, the caucuses were so fouled up because they released some kind of new app, and the app screwed up all the data. And one of their state party leaders had to resign over it. Well,
yeah, I remember that.
The New Hampshire Democrats hired him to work here. So and there was actually recently they messed up a mailing in New Hampshire, and the Republicans they took them to the Federal Election Commission over it.
Right, and they didn't mess it up. They lied. The thing they said is a remarkably strange mistake.
Right, and the same person who messed up the Iowa caucuses was involved.
God,
wow,
so it's pretty funny. So good question. If we have a state law, how can they do anything about it? There's something called the Rules and Bylaws Committee. All these boards have committees and meetings and bylaws, and they meet and they spend hours talking over every jot and tittle. So they've been doing that at the Rules and Bylaws Committee to look at adjusting their calendar for which state goes when in the Democratic primaries. And I believe it was back in August 5th. And this is on YouTube. You can go watch it.
Just to clarify, this is a national committee of Democrats?
This is for the DNC,
okay.
Right? The Democrat National Committee. They changed their bylaws to say that if a candidate is on the ballot in a state that isn't following the calendar, and keep in mind they delayed setting the calendar until after the general election.
So it has not yet been made.
The calendar has not been determined. But they did change their bylaws to say that if a candidate's name is on the ballot in a state that's not following their calendar, their dictated calendar, that candidate will be sanctioned. And what the National Committee can do is decide who gets delegates. And delegates, sort of like the Electoral College, ultimately decide who gets the nomination. So that's what they can do, is strip. If New Hampshire decides to, if they take New Hampshire out of the running for the first primary, but a candidate tries to campaign here and put their name on the ballot, even if they won, it wouldn't count for anything. So they can sort of like chop their knees out from under them, and that's what.
Okay, just to clarify, why would they want to do that? I mean, like if enough of their candidates did it, why would they? I mean, that would be bad.
It would be bad, but that's what they get to dictate.
The candidates won't, though. This is the thing you have to understand, Mark, is the Democrats are very highly controlled from the top. It's very centralized, controlled. So Vermin Supreme might file, but they don't care what Vermin Supreme does, right? Because there's certain people they can't control. But for the official big name, Hillary Clinton's, Joe Biden, whoever the Kamala Harris, whoever their main people might be, they're going to follow the rules of the DNC. They're not going to do, some sort of random do what I want campaign, right?
There's another aspect to this that's very interesting, and it has to do with the Democrats' fixation on identity politics. Okay, So nationally, the conversation is all about what you look like, who you sleep with,
right,
what your gender is, right? And that's all they fixate on that more than anything else. And what's been happening is because New Hampshire's demographics, we'll say that they're monochrome demographics, right? I think it's like 93% Caucasian in New Hampshire. You know, that's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just
that is to Democrats.
It's just a fact.
You know?
To Democrats, it's a huge thing, right? So there's like this element of diversity is the most important thing that's seeping into it, and it's kind of bubbling to the surface right now. So
interesting.
What's really interesting for Democrats within New Hampshire, they're at odds with the conversation nationally.
Sure.
They have to defend. New Hampshire voters are who they have to, court to vote for them, but they're not good enough for the national party to decide who the president is first, right? So it creates this like interesting tension between Democrats in the other 49 states.
That is interesting.
So on this first in the nation, if the Democratic Party tells the Democratic candidates not to run, they likely, in New Hampshire, they likely won't, even though the primary will be dictated by the state of New Hampshire. It'll just basically be unattended.
We may literally see Vermin Supreme win the Democratic primary in New Hampshire if that happens.
Right, something to that effect may very well occur. I mean, likely the Democratic voters will go and they'll vote, but there just won't be the points that go on the scoreboard at that time for the Democratic candidates. They'll just something else will happen.
Right, and it remains to be seen. But the clue that we have is back in that August meeting of the Rules and Bylaws Committee. They changed the rules to say that if you're a candidate and you're in this, if you're on the ballot in a state that's not in our calendar, then you'll be sanctioned.
But we don't know at this point what that calendar looks like and whether New Hampshire's on it. But they've signaled that may very well be the case because they're super concerned that white people are running everything and they can't have that, and New Hampshire's too white for them.
Keith,
they're racist against New Hampshire.
Keith, can we keep you or do you have to run? Can you stay or do you have to go?
I can stay a few more minutes.
All right, a few more minutes with Keith Hammond here. He's with us because I do want to talk to him about the blockchain thing. We like talking about crypto here on Free Talk Live, and I know he's had some successes in that area, but we'll finish up on the Democrats as well because this is very unusual news. More coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. President Biden says he fears there has been a substantial loss of life in Florida after Hurricane Ian slammed ashore yesterday, leaving millions of people without power and the state's infrastructure reeling. More than 2 million customers are without electricity. There has been extensive flooding and devastation of property after the storm barreled across central Florida on its way to the Atlantic Ocean. President Biden spoke during a visit to the headquarters of FEMA, the federal government's emergency management agency.
It made landfall yesterday, and it is still moving across the state today. This could be the deadliest hurricane in Florida's history. The numbers are still unclear, but we're hearing early reports of what may be substantial loss of life.
And the president pledged a full government response to the storm. He spoke today with Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis, and President Biden says he will visit Florida and Puerto Rico in the next few days. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is condemning plans by Russia to declare the annexation of occupied parts of Ukraine tomorrow. Guterres says the annexation will have no legal standing and goes against the United Nations Charter.
The Russian Federation is one of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, shares a particular responsibility to respect the Charter. Any decision to proceed with the annexation of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson and Zaporizhia, regions of Ukraine, would have no legal value and deserves to be condemned.
British Prime Minister Liz Truss is under fire again in the UK after a round of radio interviews aimed at defending her fiscal policies only created fresh questions about them. But the Prime Minister indicated she will not change course, despite IMF demands that her tax-cutting proposals be withdrawn. FSN's London Bureau Chief Laura Macon-Isherwood with the latest.
UK Prime Minister Liz Truss claims her government is pulling all the levers to drive economic growth. In the short term, however, the economy is in flux. The pound tanked after the headlines of her Chancellor's mini-budget broke, prompting so much concern that on Wednesday the Bank of England announced it would start buying government bonds in a bid to bring stability to the market. Banks and other lenders have continued to pull mortgage products as interest rates rise and concerns grow about loan affordability down the line. Prime Minister Truss, though, maintains she had to take what she calls decisive action and says she's prepared to take controversial decisions. Laura Macon-Isherwood, London.
Major strike action has been taking place in France today. 3 of the country's main unions are calling for salary rises in the face of the country's runaway inflation. They are also demanding a halt to pension reform. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. Phones are open if you want to join the show at 603-283-6160. Ian and Mark in the studio tonight. Got a special call on the line. Keith Ammon is with us here. He's a Free State Project mover, early mover, and now on his wrapping up his third term as a state representative. He said he's running again for a 4th term and has been pretty successful so far. He's one of the highest rated state reps out there by the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance. He used to actually be one of the board members of the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, and so he's definitely one of the doers here. And he's here to enlighten us on a very unusual political mess or situation that's developing here for the Democrats in New Hampshire. Keith, I'm going to recap what you just told us, and you tell me if I got anything wrong. As I understand it, there's a Democratic committee within the national DNC, and they set various different bylaws, rules, and elections rules and such, and they voted recently to say that they're going to set a calendar of which states have what primaries and such in which order. And if New Hampshire's not at the top, because New Hampshire's supposed to have the first in the nation primary, it's state law here that happens. New Hampshire has it first. So if Nevada moves theirs up, New Hampshire moves theirs sooner, right? That's the way it's supposed to work here. But basically the Democrats said, well, New Hampshire state can have whatever they're going to do, but what we're going to do as the Democrats is we're going to say officially, if you join the primary in New Hampshire and we don't, if we put the primary back from being first on our list, which they haven't done yet, but they might, if they do that, and a candidate who's running for as a Democrat, say for president, joins the primary in New Hampshire, they will be sanctioned. They will be punished by the Democratic Party for that by basically they have no delegates that they get from, even if they win the New Hampshire primary, they will get no delegates. There may be some other form of punishment for them.
They can sanction in whatever way they want. This is like the definition of signaling that you're going to cut off your nose to spite your face.
And you gave us some of the reasons for this, because the Democrats are all about, quote unquote diversity, and it doesn't look good for New Hampshire, which is a mostly white state, that to be voting on the presidential primary for the Democrats. Did I misunderstand anything there?
No, that's a pretty good recap. It comes down to the whole issue of diversity being the most important thing, right? That's the Democratic mantra, and it's kind of undermining
the votes.
Democrats' ability to hold on to the First of the Nation, status.
Well, and on top of that, the votes of Democrats, right? Like that, what they're saying is the Democrats in New Hampshire are not sufficiently good, just, and diverse Democrats, so they should not get a vote. Because if you don't vote first in the nation in the primary in New Hampshire, you don't vote. Your vote isn't going to happen. Like, there's not going to be a Democratic primary happen in August or something if they don't have it in February or January. It's just not going to happen. And they're saying, well, the Democrats in New Hampshire can stick it, just like they used to say about the Democrats in Wyoming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is interesting.
So, this is all
go ahead.
It's all speculation at this point, but I have a pretty long Twitter thread if you're interested in this stuff. If you search for hashtag FITN, First of the Nation, you should see something come up. And
what's your Twitter handle? What's your @ username on Twitter?
It's REP Rep Keith Ammon.
AMMON is how that is spelled.
That's right.
Here's one of the other interesting aspects of this. You're essentially, the Democratic Party, if they do this, and again, they're going to wait until after this election, the midterms, to make this decision, apparently, but if they do decide to sort of decertify the New Hampshire primary, then they're essentially giving the leftists, the hardest leftists, another reason to leave New Hampshire at that point. Because if these people want to be counted within their precious, mother organization at the national level, then they're going to have to go somewhere else, right?
Right. I mean, how big of a deal is the primary in Vermont? That's what it would amount to. We're a similar sized state.
But at least they'd be counted in some other state, right? Like, then they would, in theory, have a say.
Right. Yeah, I think that there's some political activists, it's certainly true with libertarians, that some political activists come to New Hampshire to door knock for their apparatus and say, you know what? I like it here.
Yeah.
They're trying to get the people elected, but then they're like, I like it here, and this feeds something that's important to me, the First in the Nation thing, and I think I'm going to make a life here. And that happens with libertarians all the time,
sure.
And it probably thus happens with Republicans and Democrats to some extent. I don't know how much, but it probably happens.
So none of those people will be coming here if they decertify New Hampshire for primary status.
Right. And New Hampshire is just, last I saw, just barely growing as a state. So, dozens of people actually as a number of significance.
Well, and it's mostly growing Republican, according to the numbers that have come out, as we mentioned earlier. So let's say, here's my question, Keith. Do you think that they're waiting until after this election to kind of take the temperature of New Hampshire to see, how well New Hampshire Democrats do this election and say, all right, well, they held out pretty good. It looks like we got a good base. Maybe we'll stick with it. Or if the Democrats get just, smashed at the elections this year, and the last time around, the Republicans almost cleaned house statewide. The Republicans got the governor's seat. Again, they got the majority of both the Senate and the state House. So do you think that's what they're waiting on?
Very certainly could be. I think their chairman sort of alluded to that in a recent interview for the main news channel here in the state, that they were, waiting to see how thoughtful the voters will be in the general election. But the speculation is it's a fait accompli, and they didn't want to hurt, especially Maggie Hassan's chances of getting reelected by announcing that before the election. That's the speculation.
So they're just waiting. You're saying it's a done deal. They're going to do this, you think.
The primary, I mean, the general obviously is going to be meaningful, but the primary is it's a nothing burger as far as election coming. Joe Biden is the Democratic nominee. I can tell you who the Democratic nominee is coming up in 2024.
Well, unless he dies.
Well, he could die.
So he came in, if you remember back in 2020, he came in 5th in New Hampshire, and he fled the state, got in an airplane, and went to South Carolina before the count was even in.
Mm-hmm.
And he had to have his friend Clyburn in that state kind of resurrect his campaign. So
Well, it doesn't surprise me that
Kamala
Joe
Harris
Biden did
pulled
well
out
in a state full of, racists on his side. Those Democratic Southern Democrats have a long history of, managing to get their guy in through hook or crook.
Right. Yeah. So, but if he's the candidate, they might be worried that he'll be embarrassed again in New Hampshire. But we'll see.
Wow, absolutely fascinating, Keith. Thanks for summing all that up for us. Really appreciate it. Was there anything else you wanted to share tonight?
That's about it. We can talk about the crypto commission.
Oh man, we're real short on time. But yeah, why don't you just tell us real fast what you did with crypto in the last session and what you had? Did you have success?
We passed a few bills. We got the governor's attention. He created a commission that's still ongoing. There's going to be public input sessions on that commission coming up.
Nice.
And we got some attention on it.
Okay, cool.
And there's people in the industry around the state that are kind of plugging into that commission and giving their expertise.
Did the governor sign those bills that passed?
There was one big one that he did sign.
He did, okay.
That was, House Bill 1503.
And some of these things are trying to get New Hampshire up to speed with Wyoming, which had passed some similar legislation previously. Would you say New Hampshire is there quite yet, or is Wyoming still beating us on some things?
We're not there yet. So the second mouse gets the cheese. Wyoming did some things that might not be so beneficial that we can kind of learn from their mistakes.
Interesting.
And I think we'll be in a good we'll be in a good spot, especially in the Northeast.
All right, cool. I'd like to hear it, and I'm sure we'll hear more about it as it develops. I hope to hear more when this public meeting happens. I hope I'll be able to attend it and document. Thank you, Keith, for calling in here tonight. And again, plug that Twitter handle one more time for folks who want to follow you.
It's REP Rep Keith Ammon.
Rep Keith Ammon, AMMON. Thanks for being on here for the extended discussion. Definitely appreciate it. We're going to keep our eyes on this one. This is very interesting what the Democrats might be doing to the first in the nation primary. Just throwing their own voters in one state potentially under the bus and just saying, yeah, we don't care what you think. You mean nothing to us. I think some people are going to get up and leave New Hampshire because of that. More coming up. It's Free Talk Live. Do you prefer to listen to Free Talk Live on your schedule on demand? You can find the link to our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com, which features the daily digest of our radio show 7 days a week. Just drop our RSS feed into your favorite podcast client or subscribe to us on the large platforms if you prefer, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartMedia, Spotify, and Stitcher. All the links are at feeds.freetalklive.com. If the daily digests aren't enough for you and you really don't want to miss a moment of Free Talk Live, you can always sign up for our AMPS Patreon at amps.freetalklive.com for just $5 a month, and you'll get the full radio show without recorded commercials. Plus, you'll help us advertise, market, promote, and support Free Talk Live. That's amps.freetalklive.com to join AMPS or feeds.freetalklive.com to get our main podcast or find us on the major podcast platforms.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. Moments remain. If you are on the line, we're going to do our best to get you heard here. If you're not there, then don't call tonight because lines are almost loaded up. With you tonight, it is Ian.
And Mark.
And, of course, if you've been listening for the last couple of years, you probably know that we were raided by the FBI in March of last year. We're calling it the Crypto 6, and we've talked a lot about it over the last year or so. I'm going to be heading to court probably as soon as December to take this on as the last standing member of the Six. And so if you want to help us out by supporting a documentary film that is kind of in production. There's been a trailer that's been produced. Mark, the church paid for the trailer to be produced, but the question is, do people actually want to see this thing? And so
that's what I want to know is do you want to see this movie about the Crypto 6? Because I think it's important, so important that I was instrumental in getting the trailer made so that you could see what it was like, and you can go to this site and see the trailer.
Right. Ballad of the Crypto 6.
We need your support.
So you can become an Indiegogo backer. There's some perks that involve T-shirts or even hosting Free Talk Live or having dinner or lunch or whatever with some of your favorite hosts here on Free Talk Live. You can go to Ballad of the Crypto 6 with the numeral 6.com to learn more about that and see the what I would call lengthy trailer. It's like 9 minutes long, so it's a pretty good sizzle reel, as they call it, I think, in the business. Give you a feel for what the full-length documentary might be like, kind of the quality that it would have. And I think it looks great.
They call me the Teflon Dad.
Ballad of the Crypto 6 with the numeral 6.com. If you want to support that effort, we go to Footloose, calling in from New Hampshire. Footloose is actually one of the guys I was talking about earlier in the show when, Mark, you were being complimentary towards the King Sununu here in New Hampshire, and I pointed out people have been arrested. I pointed out to Mark that peaceful people who were doing absolutely nothing but sitting still and quietly at a meeting were arrested by this thug. Footloose is one of those folks. I don't know if that's why you were calling in, Footloose, but I just figured I'd mention you. What's on your mind tonight?
No, yeah. So I'm probably 40 minutes into the show. I came in late, so I'm gonna watch the whole thing, and I'm interested to hear that. Mark, I think he's a nice guy and everything, but he's a little bit logically inconsistent, but that's another topic. That's not why I'm calling.
What were you calling
So
about?
why I'm calling is the discrimination of Free State Project members, and there's a state law. It's 354-A:1, and it declares that the practices of discrimination against any of our inhabitants because of age, sex, gender, identity, race, creed, color, etc., etc. So what's happening is the Free State Project has a creed. It is a creed, and they're being discriminated for it. And then I would point people to go to Part A 14 here. Let me go down real quick. And 1 second.
And when you say the creed, you're talking about the idea that government should. So they have what they call the statement of intent, which is that free staters believe that the maximum role of government should be the protection of life, liberty, and property. And that's the maximum role. Of course, you can also believe that government shouldn't exist and also be a free state.
As far as discrimination goes, Ian, you and I went to look at a piece of property one time. And we made an offer on that piece of property. And that offer was turned down based on the fact that we were free staters, more or less.
Yeah, we found that out.
So there's a section in here. It's a little bit below A14 where I just got to, and discrimination on housing. So you guys should check out this whole chapter. But A14 is interference, coercion, or intimidation. It's a civil rights violation to coerce, intimidate, threaten, or interfere with any person in the exercise or enjoyment of, or on account of his or her having exercised or enjoyed, or on account of his or her having aided or encouraged any other person in the exercise or enjoyment of any right granted or protected by this subdivision, which would be...
All right, what does that mean? I'm getting lost in the legalese.
It means that when Sununu went after some people that were just sitting in this this room, this room of political rally...
No. This has to do
Those
with
are mostly
Free
natives.
State Project
Yeah.
getting attacked by the Democrat Party and all these people putting out these attack ads about free staters. It's attacking their creed, and it's violating, it's intimidation and coercion, and it's violating their rights to express themselves in this state freely without.
Well, I welcome it.
That's an interesting point, and I think that it should be interesting if are you going to litigate this?
I can't. I'm not a free stater, but other free staters could. There's, penalties, and there's $10,000 fines and all this stuff. So you go to 354A. It's called, the top title is State Commission for Human Rights.
It's an interesting approach, and if somebody wants to do that, then I wouldn't tell them not to. But to me, I welcome it, Footloose. I think they should attack and libel and slander all they want to. Bring it on, because all to me it is just an indication of our success. I agree. Yeah, and I'm not even a free stater either, but I support them. I love what they're doing. I love the fact that more liberty-loving people are coming here. And if the Democrats thought that the Free Staters weren't a threat, they wouldn't be doing this. They would be ignoring the Free Staters, and they are doing anything but. They are doubling, tripling down, and they're making the Free Staters their election target this year. They don't even care about the old Republicans.
Well, the saying goes, the flak gets heavy when you're over the target.
Yes.
And all this, whatever they're slandering, it brings all more attention. It's free advertising as far as I'm concerned. And bring it on, everybody. Move to New Hampshire. Like-minded people, get over here. Don't listen to Mark. You don't know what he's talking about.
That's a fact. Hey, Footloose, what is an update on the New Hampshire 9 case? I know you are the only person of the 9 people arrested at the governor's meeting. What was it, late 2021, I think, at this point, or maybe it was 2020. Anyway, it's been a little while.
It's actually the 1-year anniversary is coming up October 13th,
okay.
And we're having a protest at the police academy. So
the scene of the crime.
To join. Yeah. So we're going to have a little protest on the anniversary there, and the status is there were motions to dismiss. They were all denied.
Of course.
They dropped the charges on one woman.
Okay.
And so the rest of us are moving forward. There's going to be 8 separate trials.
Oh, wow.
And some of them will be jury trials because some people got charged with Class A misdemeanors.
Right. And you're one of them, right?
And I didn't get charged with Class A misdemeanors.
Wow.
I got charged with 4 counts of disorderly conduct.
But they charged them all as Class B, so you don't have a jury. You have to go in front of a judge.
Yeah, if people want to stay up to date, go to the Absolute Defiance YouTube or on Odyssey. We're also synced to Odyssey, so
nice.
Absolute Defiance all over the place. Yep.
Yeah, thanks for the update. We'll keep in mind. Are you going to be at the hearing, I think, on October 7th?
On the 7th. I'm going to be there, so that's the thing. So I haven't gotten any dates in the mail yet or anything like that. they're acting like the last time I was there, the prosecutor's like, where are you? Where do you live? I'm like, you guys know exactly where I live. You got my address. You've sent me mail before. So send me mail. They keep trying to force me to have these lawyers that are not representing me represent me. It's like crazy kangaroo court. And all that is documented on my channel. We've been recording in the courts. I record in the courts. They're not going to stop me. They're going to have to arrest me or hold me.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. All right, well, I look forward to seeing you there, and listeners that want to get the latest on this also beyond just Absolute Defiance. A lot of the court videos that I've taken are over at the Free Keene channel. Just search for Footloose or New Hampshire 9, and you'll see the crazy footage from last time we were there when they have, all of a sudden, there's a CO2 meter in the courtroom that goes off in the middle of the hearing, and then they use this as the excuse to literally kick nearly every observer. The whole courtroom was packed, and they kicked nearly everyone out of the courtroom. The whole thing was a straight-up sham, and it was absolutely unbelievable. So I expect they're going to try some more dirty tactics like that this time around, so it should be interesting. Footloose, I'll see you then, man. Thanks for the call tonight. Definitely appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Take it easy.
Mark, you should have seen this. It was crazy.
Yeah, it sounds like what they're trying to say is that there's just too many people breathing in our courtroom that's open to the public.
No more public access. You have to leave. Eventually, we convinced them to open the doors and allow the people back into the courtroom, but not before they'd threatened people with arrest and showed themselves to be the little tyrants that they are once again. And all that footage is available. Just go to the Free Keene Odyssey channel at video.
Very interesting.
Yeah, video.freekeene.com, or go to freekeene.com and search for, just look for Footloose. That'll usually pull up any of the videos with him in it. He's pretty entertaining when it comes to court appearances. If you didn't get in tonight, accept my apologies. It's been a busy night. We've had Keith Ammon on with us, and so if you didn't get in tonight, we will return tomorrow, and you can join us online between now and then over at freetalklive.com. And
we love your calls, but Free Talk Live isn't a guarantee that you're going to get on the air every time you call. But,
nope, it's always best to call earlier. Don't wait till that third hour.
Yeah, why does everybody wait till 9?
I don't know why. It's a thing. It's whatever. See you tomorrow night. freetalklive.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. You have an incredible alternative